Chapter 221, Home. He took a few steps forward and picked a palm-sized awl from a small hole. With just a small squeeze, a corner broke off from that awl. In the small hole next to this one was a rusted iron sword. There were also some bone vessels that had weathered away in some of the other holes. He took a look around the area and saw that most of the items here were slightly broken. Even if some of them seemed to be in decent condition, once he approached them, they would crack just like the awl if he so much as touched them, as if they would completely shatter into pieces if he used even the slightest force. Oh well, Huzi already mentioned this before. Looks like it's true. Su Ming shook his head and laughed bitterly. Once he averted his gaze, he grabbed the very first awl he took from this place, which he also broke earlier, and placed it into his storage bag before no longer paying any attention to the place. He walked into the deeper parts of the cave abode and into the second layer. With his experience in the first layer, Su Ming did not expect much when he entered the second layer. However, right at the instant he entered the second layer, his heart started racing in his chest. Right before his eyes were an innumerable amount of jades floating in the air. These jades were shining with a gentle light that illuminated the entire chamber of the second layer. Some of the jades even shone with a variety of colors that made them stand out at first glance. Could it be that Tian Xiezi wasn't lying about Freezing Sky Clan's arts and skills? Su Ming was momentarily stunned. The colorful jades did not seem fake. Even if the color was really fake, Su Ming could still clearly sense the mighty pressure and spiritual presence coming from them. His breathing quickened and he took a few steps forward to take a closer look and grabbed a jade with his right hand. He placed it on his palm and focused his attention on it. Once he did so, he immediately felt as if his will was being absorbed into the jade, and a string of words and illusions appeared naturally in his head. However, before he could pay attention to them, the words and illusions in his head swiftly faded away and disappeared. Su Ming frowned and tried a few more times. Yet it was the same each time he tried. A glint appeared in his eyes and he let go of the jade before taking another one, but the results were the same. Is it because my level of cultivation is not high enough? He mumbled. Not wanting to give up, he picked up a few dozen more jades and focused his attention on them one by one, but they were the same. The images only appeared briefly in his mind before they disappeared. Even a simple jade that only had a small presence to it reacted the same way when Su Ming looked at it. Gradually, his face darkened. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he took in a deep breath and quelled the disappointment in his heart. Once he took a look at all the jades in the chamber and was marginally certain that all of them were fake, he laughed bitterly and shook his head before heading deeper into the chamber towards the third layer. If the map in the third layer is also fake, Su Ming remained silent as he walked towards the third layer. The third layer was built in a simple manner. It was the smallest in size, and there were stone shelves positioned around the chamber. There were some bamboo slips lying on the shelves along with some beast skins that were bundled together. Su Ming stood in the third layer and suddenly felt nervous. He was torn between the desire to know whether the map of the land of South Morning truly existed in this place and worried that he would not be able to find the alliance of the western region once he found the map. This was not the first time he felt so conflicted. He had been this nervous at the foot of Tranquil East Mountain when he held the borrowed map from Tranquil East Tribe in the past. After remaining silent for a moment, Su Ming took a deep breath. He did not look at the bamboo slips, but picked out a beast skin from the large amount of beast skins lying around, opened it slowly, and looked. Not it. There were some runic symbols that Su Ming had never seen before carved on the beast skin. With just one glance, he placed it back into its original spot and picked up another one. Not it. Not it. Su Ming took out the beast skins one by one and opened them, but none of them were the map he wanted. When there was eventually only 3 beast skins left before him, his breathing quickened. A corner of the second piece of the 3 remaining beast skins was exposed to the open, and it showed some faint lines that seemed to show the topography of a place. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he gritted his teeth and grabbed that beast skin. He had a strong feeling that the beast skin in his hand was the map he wanted to see. To him, it did not matter whether he was taken into Freezing Sky Clan or acknowledged Tian Xiezi as his master. These were not important. What was important was his goal for entering Freezing Sky Clan. the map that would allow him to return to the alliance of the Western region. That was why when Tian Shiezi said he wanted to take Su Ming as his disciple and mentioned one thing among all the other benefits he offered, the one where he a map of the land of South Morning that was even more complete than the one belonging to Freezing Sky Clan, Su Ming's interest was sparked. He did not care about entering Freezing Sky Clan. He only cared about the map. That was why Su Ming agreed to acknowledge Tian Shiezi as his master. At that moment, when he was continuously disappointed by what he saw in the first and second layers, his anxiety reached its peak when he held the beast skin in his hands. His right hand shook as he opened the beast skin before him painstakingly slowly. When the beast skin was completely unfurled and Su Ming's eyes landed on it, he trembled. He felt as if thunder was rumbling in his head, and he even felt as if there were buzzing sounds by his ears. At that moment, he had forgotten everything. He forgot that he was within the chamber. He forgot that he was at the 9th summit of Freezing Sky Clan. He forgot that he was in the land of South Morning. All his attention was gathered on his eyes, on his gaze that landed on the beast skin in his hands. This was a torn and worn down beast skin, but even so, the map drawn on it was rather complete. There was an old and aged presence coming from that map, making all those who touched it to feel just how old that beast skin was. This map should not be Tian Shiezi's work, but something that had existed since a long time ago. There were 5 continents on the map. With his eyes trained on the map, Su Ming sat down on the floor slowly. There was a lost and nostalgic look in his eyes, and with grief on his face, he caressed the map gently with his right hand. He saw the land of South Morning on the map, and also saw the alliance of Western region just right above it. "My home," he mumbled. Tears had started falling from his eyes some time ago. The tears slid down his face from the corners of his eyes and stained his clothes before seeping into the fabric. 4 of the 5 continents were located to the north, south, east, and west, and right at the center was the 5th continent. A cauldron was drawn on the spot. The land of South Morning was located to the south, and the alliance of the Western region was to the west, but there was a ravine between these 2 continents that seemed impossible to cross. Su Ming's tears stained his clothes, and some of them fell on the beast skin. He lowered his head and did not hear the sigh that came from behind him. "So you acknowledge me as your master because of this?" Chapter 222. What is the meaning of creation? Su Ming stared at the beast skin map before him with a stunned expression. That map was stained with colors showing the signs of time. The edges were pretty worn out, giving the feeling that it had been around for ages. The seemingly impassable ravine between the land of South Morning and the alliance of the West Morning was marked with a black line. This line did not exist solely in between the land of South Morning and the alliance of the Western region. It also existed between the other continents as well. Someone drew this map from memory after the second god of Berserkers was buried, though it's only drawn with him guessing the distance. Before the second god of Berserkers, the entire land of Berserkers was one big continent. It was gigantic, and there were some who could walk through the entire continent. Tian Shiezi's old voice came slowly from behind Su Ming. When the second god of Berserkers died, the land of Berserkers was divided and became 5 continents with the Great Yu Dynasty as its center. The cauldron in the middle shows where Great Yu Dynasty is located. It's marked with a cauldron because this cauldron is the tribal vessel for us Berserkers. Tian Shiezi's voice became slightly low. The Great Barren Cauldron. The moment these 4 words came out of Tian Shiezi's mouth, Su Ming shuddered. His attention was dragged away from the beast skin map and the only words that echoed in his ears were the 3 words, Great Barren Cauldron. Barren Cauldron. A violent surge of emotions formed in Su Ming's heart, and Tian Shiezi saw it reflected on Su Ming's face, though he assumed that it was because the youth had heard about the Great Yu Dynasty. He did not know that Su Ming was thinking about that black stone hanging from his neck and all the sights he saw after he entered the space in the stone. A barren cauldron is required for the process of quenching herbs into pills. Is there some sort of connection between that barren cauldron and the Great Barren Cauldron Tian Shiezi mentioned? Bewilderment appeared on Su Ming's face. The black lines you see between the 5 continents are suspended lines of blood. They're formed through the grudge left behind after the second god of Berserkers died. It's rumored that the immortals used this grudge and worked together with the shamans to lay out this exceedingly cruel rune. This is the rune that caused the 5 continents in the land of berserkers to be incomplete. It's a grueling task trying to move between continents. Tian Xiezi's voice echoed in the chamber and stayed for a long time. I have no idea why you need the map, and I don't know where you want to go on these 5 continents, but, since you're my disciple, then I must tell you this: work hard to increase your level of cultivation. Your level of cultivation is everything. With your current power, even if you want to leave the land of South Morning, it's impossible for you to traverse the world outside Sky Mist Barrier, much less go to the other continents. You must first be able to move around safely outside the barrier before you can think of anything else and go to the places you want, and you need to rely on great power to do this. If you don't have enough power, then don't think of anything else. Even if you think about it, it's useless. It'll just make you frustrated and you won't be able to calm down. If your heart isn't calm, then your soul will be in turmoil, which will cause your mark to scatter when it manifests, and you will find it hard to improve. The key is your level of cultivation. You must increase your level of cultivation. Tian Xiezi said softly and lifted his right hand to pat Su Ming's shoulder. You're not the only one with a troubled past. Your eldest senior brother has his own past, and your second senior brother has his as well. Tian Xiezi faltered in his words, as if he felt moved by something. Su Ming was silent for a moment, then he looked at the beast skin map before him and asked in a low whisper, what level of cultivation will I need to go out of Sky Mist Barrier and out of the land of South Morning? Tian Xiezi was silent for a while before he said, those who aren't in the Bone Sacrifice realm don't even need to think about walking past Sky Mist Barrier. Even those who have reached Bone Sacrifice realm need to be careful outside the barrier. The slightest carelessness will lead to a person's doom. What lies between us and the shamans is a blood feud. If you reach the Berserker Soul realm, then you can travel through the barrier as you please, but you still need to be careful. Still, as long as you don't run into the powerful shamans from the shaman tribe and don't go to some of the more dangerous places, then you can still make sure you don't die. So what you're saying is that if I reach Berserker Soul realm, then I'll earn the right to leave the land of South Morning. Su Ming mumbled. It's just a right, though. The Berserker Soul realm is merely the completion of the first great realm of us practitioners of the Berserker arts. There's bound to be other realms after the Berserker Soul realm. But it's a pity, because no one knows exactly what are the other realms after the Berserker Soul realm and how we're supposed to reach them. Tian Xiezi sighed softly. Why? Su Ming lifted his head and looked at Tian Xiezi. Because the 4th god of Berserkers still hasn't appeared even after so long. Only the 4th god of Berserkers can feel the presence of the 3rd god of Berserkers, will through a trance and obtain the inheritance of the god of Berserkers, subsequently sensing the higher realms and create the statue of the god of Berserkers for the realms after the Berserker Soul realm, and only then will those who have reached Berserker Soul realm be able to sense their calling. Su Ming looked at Tian Xiezi and said after a long while, when I was coming here, I met a man named Bai on one of the parts of Sky Mist Barrier. He's a divine general in the Bone Sacrifice realm and he mentioned you. He said you once ventured out of the land of South Morning and went to the Great Yu dynasty. Is this true? Tian Xiezi was silent. A conflicted look appeared on his face. He lifted his head and looked in another direction in the chamber. That part of the chamber was empty, and Su Ming had no idea what he was looking at. Nostalgia gradually appeared in Tian Xiezi's eyes. I don't know whether what I saw was the Great Yu dynasty. Once you reach the Berserker Soul realm and you want to leave, then I'll tell you about it. Tian Xiezi closed his eyes, and his voice sounded even older. I know a person whose level of cultivation isn't even in the Awakenance realm and he doesn't live in the Great Yu dynasty. He lives on another continent, but has left his hometown many times. There was even once, where he might have gone to the Great Yu dynasty, Su Ming said, his head lowered. When Tian Xiezi heard his words, he immediately opened his eyes, and a bright glint appeared briefly in his eyes before it instantly vanished. The moment the light in his eyes shone, an incredible pressure fell upon the place suddenly, but the pressure also dissipated equally quickly, causing others to think that they might have just imagined it. However, Su Ming felt shaken. During that instant, he clearly felt as if his chi had gone still, and even the 9th summit seemed to have shuddered. Going to Great Yu dynasty from the other continents without even awakening. That's impossible, Tian Xiezi exclaimed. Impossible. It might be. Su Ming closed his eyes and covered the bewilderment in his eyes. The more he knew, the more things he found were out of place in his memories regarding Dark Mountain. It was especially so when he saw Lei Chen and Bei Ling on the chains of Han Mountain, whose appearances he had not been able to determine were real or false. There was also the elder, who seemed to have wanted to tell him something when he appeared. All of these things made him uncertain and confused about the things he saw. There's a veil covering Dark Mountain and the things that had happened when I was in the void in the crack. Perhaps when I have the ability to lift the veil, I'll be able to find out the secrets surrounding me, Su Ming thought quietly, and this was the only thought that could prevent him from losing himself in the midst of his bewilderment, stop him from breaking down from fear and his suspicions regarding his future and his past. How can I increase my power quickly? Su Ming opened his eyes and looked towards Tian Xiezi, who was sitting by his side. Your eldest senior brother asked me that question in the past, and I told him that he needed to have a clear mind. He thought about it for a long time and chose to isolate himself for long periods of time in the end. Tian Xiezi cast Su Ming a profound look. There was a brief pause in his sentence before he continued speaking. Your second senior brother also asked me the same question, and I also told him to clear his mind. His decision was different from your eldest senior brother's. He chose to go plant flowers and trees. As for your third senior brother, well, he's an ignorant fellow. He didn't ask me that question, only spending all his days drinking and searching for his heart while wasting his life away. I'll tell you the same answer. You have to have a clear mind. Tian Xiezi smiled faintly and pointed towards the entrance with his right hand. You must have been disappointed by the berserker vessels in the first layer of the chamber. You see them as broken and useless items. That is the same as the wine you drank from the gourd. You think it's water, but to me, it's wine. That's the same logic. To me, the items in the first layer of the chamber are things that I collected throughout my life. In my heart, they're the most precious enchanted vessels in the world. You must also have been disappointed by all the skills belonging to Freezing Sky Clan stored in the second layer, because you couldn't tell what was within. There was a ghost of a smile on Tian Xiezi's lips as he looked at Su Ming. Su Ming was silent. He did not speak. You still don't truly understand. What do berserkers practice? We practice creation, and that means we aren't limited by anything. We rely on ourselves to create whatever it is that we want. Those so-called skills and abilities are just creations left behind by our ancestors. There are hundreds upon thousands of berserkers in Freezing Sky Clan, and the powerful ones are as numerous as clouds, but are these people practicing the creation? Do they know the meaning of creation? My disciples don't need any skills or abilities. They only need to understand the rules of creation lying in the world once they find the way to clear their mind. There seemed to be a strange glow on Tian Xiezi's face. There was a sort of obstinacy with how he looked with that glow on his face. However, Tian Xiezi's obstinacy seemed almost like madness to Su Ming. Creation, this one word is what people desire and what they are searching for. But what is the true meaning of creation? This is my question for you. Go think about it, understand it, and once you have your answer, come tell me. That mysterious look was back on Tian Xiezi's face. He stroked his beard and spoke languidly with the airs of a well-learned sage. Can I take this map with me? Su Ming stood up quietly and carefully folded up the beast skin scroll before him. If you are my disciple, then you can take away one item from each layer, Tian Xiezi said, smiling softly. Su Ming put the beast skin away into his bosom, then looked at Tian Xiezi and took a deep breath. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed towards him. Please receive the greeting from your disciple, Su Ming, master. Tian Xiezi laughed boisterously and waved his arm. Immediately, wind blew past with a whistle and brought Su Ming out of the cave. Your senior brothers are a little odd, but you should get in touch with them. Go and search for a way to clear your mind. Trust me, you'll be able to find it. Chapter 223, Third Senior Brother's Eccentricities. Su Ming stood alone on the top of the ninth summit. Once he was taken out of the chamber by Tian Xiezi, he was left alone on the spot. He had no idea where Tian Xiezi went. Freezing Sky Clan's ninth summit, is it my home now? Su Ming looked at the white world lying before him in the distance, and a familiar yet strange feeling rose in his heart. What was familiar was the snow, and what was strange was the land. Snow danced in the air around him. When he looked at it, Su Ming lowered his head and walked down the plant-covered stairs. Since I'm already here, then I might as well find a cave abode first. As Su Ming walked down, he looked around him, and all he saw were plants that could survive in the cold. They grew so densely that they covered most of the mountain. Our second senior brother is far too hard-working, which led him to believe that he could do better. The words of his third senior brother, Huzi, echoed in Su Ming's ears. He walked for a long time, and gradually began to understand what those words meant. When night arrived and the world turned dark, Su Ming found a place that was not covered in plants in a certain part of the ninth summit's mountainside. The spot was a little further away from the stairs. There was a big stone protruding off the ground, and it formed a platform that was not too big. When Su Ming stood on the platform and the moaning winter breeze blew past his ears, he lifted his right hand, and immediately, the center of his brows shone with a green light. The small virescent sword flew out and circled Su Ming several times before it charged towards the rock wall of the ninth summit next to him. Banging sounds echoed in the air, and under the small sword's continuous barrage, Su Ming gradually opened up a simple cave abode in the rock wall. The ice stones on the wall were incredibly sturdy. Just trying to hew out a simple cave abode required a bit of an effort from Su Ming's part. Only when the moon hung high in the sky was the cave abode finally finished. Su Ming put away the small sword and looked at the cave abode before him. It was so simple that it did not even have a door. He shook his head and went in. There was only one room in his abode. Su Ming walked to the end and looked around. The walls of the cave gave off a chilling air, causing the entire abode to also be cold. He sat down quietly and took out the beast skin map from his bosom. He lowered his head and looked at it for a moment before sighing softly. Power. Master is right. If I want to get out of the land of South Morning, then I need great power. First, I need to find a method to clear my mind and understand the true meaning of creation. Su Ming put away the beast skin map and sat down on the ground with a contemplative look on his face. Time trickled by. During his first night in Freezing Sky Clan's ninth summit and in the simple cave abode with the moaning winter wind as his companion, Su Ming spent most of the night mulling over Tian Xiezi's words. Besides the wind, Freezing Sky Clan was quiet at night. It was especially so on the ninth summit, because there were just too few people living there. Moonlight scattered on the ground outside in a gentle manner, though the light gave the snow on the ground a biting cold air. When it was almost daylight, Su Ming woke up from his meditation. He frowned. He was a little unclear on what exactly clearing his mind meant. Clearing my own mind. I should have already done it. My mind is already calm and cleared. But what's the use of it for my training? What does Master mean by understanding it? Su Ming thought about it for a long time, but still found himself a little unclear about it. He lifted his head and looked at the dimly lit sky outside his abode before walking outside. An unfamiliar land and an unfamiliar mountain. The moment Su Ming walked outside, cold wind blew against his face and brought some snow. He did not mind the cold brought by the snow. The sky was dimly lit. The darkness around the area had mostly gone away and he could see the outline of the land. Su Ming walked forward without a direction and the snow he walked on made crunching sounds under his feet. Those sounds along with the rhythm at which they came gradually relaxed Su Ming's mind that had become confused from his inability to understand his master's words. Clearing the mind, does he mean to train the mind? Su Ming felt as if he understood something. He had no idea how much time had passed, but as he walked around, he suddenly stopped and a piercing and fierce look appeared in his eyes. However, he soon relaxed and looked forward with an odd expression. He saw a person crouching before him behind a big stone. That person had a pot of wine in his hands. As he drank, he would stretch his head out from behind the big rock carefully and peek outwards. From where Su Ming stood, he could only see that person's back. He could not see exactly what the person was so carefully peeking at from behind the rock. Third senior brother. Su Ming's expression became even odder. He could not really understand what this man who kept referring to himself as Grandpa Hu was doing by crouching there. Shish, Third senior brother had clearly noticed Su Ming. He turned back and swiftly placed his index finger by his mouth and made faces at him. Once he signaled Su Ming to not make a sound, he beckoned him over. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he walked carefully towards him. When he saw that his third senior brother was being very cautious and even had a hint of nervousness on his face, Su Ming could not help but to keep his guard up. He even bent down and approached him slowly. When he saw Su Ming's attitude, admiration appeared on the man's face. Once Su Ming was close, he grabbed his arm and pulled him behind himself before he whispered, "Don't speak. No matter what you see later, don't cause a ruckus, or else things will get troublesome." This third senior brother of his had kept him company when Su Ming was traveling to the 9th summit, but he had never seen such an expression on the dense-looking man. When Su Ming saw this, he could not help but be surprised. However, he also became serious because of his words and nodded his head. That's it. When I look over next time, you can peek with me. Remember this, don't cause a ruckus." Third senior brother licked his lips. As he warned Su Ming, he drank some more wine, then lifted his head and looked out of the edge of the mountain rock. Su Ming also lifted his head and stole a glance over the edge of the mountain rock. That one glance alone made the expression on his face become even more peculiar. There was nothing behind the mountain rock. The entire place was filled with plants, and there was no sign of anyone being there. The place was silent. Third senior brother's spirits were lifted up and he whispered quickly, "He's here." The moment those words were said, Su Ming immediately saw a person in white floating towards them like a ghost from the distance. However, he was not really traveling very fast. Once he drifted to the spot filled with plants before them, he stopped. Judging by his looks, that person was Su Ming's second senior brother. There was a cautious look on his face. Once he looked around to check his surroundings, he lowered his head and looked at the plants by his feet before crouching down and picking some of them. After that, he looked around once again before drifting away into the distance. Su Ming was stunned. He simply could not understand just what he needed to observe in this person. The cautious and stern look on Hu Zi's face made Su Ming feel that this was completely absurd. Once their second senior brother left, Hu Zi relaxed and leaned against the stone with a wide grin on his face as he looked at Su Ming. "So, didn't that feel great?" Su Ming was speechless. He looked at his third senior brother and found himself at a complete loss for words. "Let me tell you, youngest junior brother. Do you know who was the smartest person on the 9th summit?" There was a prideful look of third senior brother's face as he picked up the pot of wine and drank a huge mouthful. He even let out a drunken burp in the process. Su Ming was silent and shook his head. He felt that he should not be here, or perhaps more accurately speaking, he should not even have come out of his cave abode. "You don't? Well, that's to be expected. This is your first day on the mountain. Let me tell you, if we compare our powers, I can't win against our second senior brother, neither can I win against our eldest senior brother, much less the old man. But intelligence is another matter. Is there anyone else who is smarter than me on this mountain?" "None." Third senior brother's expression became even more prideful. Su Ming continued staying silent. He looked at the man before him and had no idea just how he came to this conclusion. "You're shocked, right? Let me tell you, your grandpa who is the smartest person because I like to think," third senior brother whispered to him with a pleased look. "Not only do I like thinking, I also like observing things. It's not just the 9th summit, I also have other targets of observation on the other mountains. I think, I observe, that's why I keep getting smarter." "What did you see just now?" "You saw our second senior brother, right? Let me tell you, what you saw was our second senior brother, but also not our second senior brother. Haha, our second senior brother is constantly paranoid and keeps saying that someone is stealing his plants at night. He even suspects that I'm the one stealing those plants, but I'm not going to tell him that I see him stealing his own plants at night every single time." The pleased look on third senior brother's face grew clearer as he whispered to Su Ming. Su Ming felt his head hurt. He rubbed the center of his brows, and just as he was about to stand up and leave. "Our senior second brother has gone mad with farming. The him you see at night and the him you see in the morning are different people. Isn't it tiring? He goes to plant stuff in the morning, and then he goes and steals at night, and he's always looking for the thief, which also happens to be him. I'm not going to tell him, though. Third senior brother grinned and took a big swig from his wine pot. Su Ming smiled wryly as he looked at him. He finally understood just what was his third senior brother's strange habit. That eccentricity of his was not his love to drink wine, but it was his love to observe and think. The wine's a little cold now. I've been here for too long, and now the wine's not nice anymore, third senior brother mumbled and stood up, then swept his gaze over Su Ming. Youngest junior brother, your senior brother who is happy today, so what do you say if I bring you to see our eldest senior brother? Our senior brother is a weird person. Isn't he silly? He's constantly in isolation just like a turtle. Isn't that tiring? He should live his life like me. He needs to think more, observe more, drink more, and dream more. But I heard from the old man when he borrowed wine from me that our eldest senior brother is different from us. He's real lucky, you know. He was the first to follow the old man, and I heard that he got himself some real skills. I heard that it's the most mysterious skill from Freezing Sky Clan, third senior brother mumbled drunkenly, pouting. Su Ming was just about to leave when he heard the man's words. His heart jumped suddenly and a brilliant light appeared in his eyes. He had a feeling that he had caught onto something from his third senior brother's words, and his feet stopped moving once again. He lowered his head and looked at his third senior brother looking at him with a drunken look and a foolish grin. Slowly, he found himself unable to tell whether this person was truly drunk, or that he was just telling him all of it on purpose. Are you coming? If you're not, then I'll go by myself. Third senior brother rubbed his eyes and yawned. Chapter 224, Epiphany. I'll go. Su Ming nodded his head. His third senior brother's spirits were immediately lifted and he picked up the gourd from the ground before lifting his head to look at the sky. As he mumbled some words that Su Ming could not hear, he lifted his hand and made a few signs with his hand as if he was scheming something. After a moment, a silly grin appeared on his face. That's great. You're real lucky. We can see our eldest senior brother today. Come, follow me closely. As third senior brother spoke, he charged into the distance. Su Ming did not say anything but simply followed behind him, looking at his third senior brother's back. He gradually found himself unable to understand this person. Su Ming ran behind Hu Zi through the mountains, and before long, as the sun started rising in the sky, they saw a rather broken mountain rock. He could see a low cave over there, and most of the entrance was blocked by a big rock, causing a large amount of sunlight to be blocked off the cave even if it was already daylight. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he asked, eldest senior brother isolated himself here. There's no way our eldest senior brother would enjoy his life this way. This is your senior brother whose cave abode. So, it looks grand, right? Wait here, I'll get me some wine. While speaking, he bowed his top half and entered through the low cave entrance. Su Ming stood stunned outside for a moment, beginning to feel doubtful about his previous speculation. Very soon, his third senior brother walked out. Some wine spilled out from the wine pot in his hands. It was clear that he had just refilled it, and there was an excited look on his face as he held the giant gourd in his hands. Let's go. We have to hurry, or else it'll be too late. As he spoke, third senior brother dashed forward. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before following behind him. The both of them ran to the bottom of the mountain. After about the time it takes to burn an incense stick to burn, Hu Zi brought Su Ming to the bottom of the mountain. With a few twists and turns, they moved to a crack in the mountain. The moment they stepped into the crack, Su Ming immediately sensed a chilling air blow against his face. He looked at his third senior brother's actions. It was clear that he was incredibly familiar with this place. They walked for half a day in that crack and gradually moved deeper underground. During the entire process, there were times where they seemed to have reached the end because Su Ming could no longer see any road leading forward, but the moment Hu Zi took another turn, a new path would appear before them. They took many turns in the ice layer, and when Su Ming started feeling dizzy, his third senior brother came to a halt before him and brought him to an ice basin that was moderate in size. When he looked over, the basin seemed like a gigantic hole lying before him. It was dark inside it, and freezing air spread out from within. There were also numerous icicles hanging from the top of the basin that exuded a biting cold presence. We're here. Our eldest senior brother is down there, but it's too deep, so we can't go in. We can only look from here. Third senior brother turned around and looked at Su Ming before pointing towards the basin before them. Su Ming took a few steps forward and looked down the basin. He could not see the end with his current level of cultivation and sight. His third senior brother placed the gourd in his hand on the ground and stood beside him. He lifted his right hand and started counting on his fingers, looking as if he was counting time. There's still the time of half an incense stick left. Youngest junior brother, you'll have to wait a bit. Yet before he finished speaking, a low roar suddenly came from within the basin. That roar was so loud that the ice around the basin started trembling viciously. Su Ming's expression changed. He could clearly feel a strong wave of heat that did not belong to the ice suddenly erupting forth. He instantly took a few steps back. The heat crashed into the two like an explosion, and a wave of hot air surged forth explosively from underneath the basin. That wave of hot air gave people a sense of scorching heat that would even burn their bodies. Yet strangely, the basin and the ice around it was only melting slowly under that wave of heat. When this sight that obviously defied logic appeared before Su Ming, he felt shaken, and he took a deep breath. Darn it! Our eldest senior brother's exhalation was brought forward. Eldest senior brother, Huzi is here. I even brought our youngest junior brother. He was just taken in by the old man. On behalf of our youngest junior brother, how about you help me warm up my wine? Let me warn you, eldest senior brother, if you break my wine gourd again and embarrass me before our youngest junior brother, then I'll never come see you again. While he spoke, third senior brother quickly threw the wine gourd into the basin. The wine gourd did not fall but instead floated in midair until the heat that erupted from within the basin rushed out and crashed into it. However, cracking sounds rang out in the air. Cracks immediately appeared on the wine gourd. Some of the wine even spilled from them and fell into the basin. Eldest senior brother, Huzi let out a shrill cry and he was so shocked his expression even changed. A cold harumph came from within the basin, and a thin layer of ice immediately covered the cracks on the wine gourd, causing the wine that was spilling from the gourd to stop flowing out. At the same time, a wave of heat spread out from within the unsealed gourd. A thick alcoholic fragrance filled the air in the area, causing the people who took a breath of the air to feel warm. The surface of the gourd was covered by a layer of ice while the wine in the gourd boiled, and a large part of it turned into alcoholic steam. That's enough, eldest senior brother. That's enough. Huzi's expression changed really quickly. Just a breath ago, he had a wretched look on his face, and now he was already smiling happily. Third, don't do this again. Every single time you leave, I have to change the outline of the path outside, but you always manage to get in either way. The wine gourd covered in ice floated towards Huzi and landed before him. At the same time, a voice that carried a hint of resignation traveled out from within the basin. That voice was very gentle, but the moment it landed in Su Ming's ears, he first felt a chill run down his spine, and that chill soon turned into warmth that spread through his entire body. You're the only one who can come up with the idea of using the origin breath I refined after much difficulty to warm your wine. Ha! Just remember to deliver half of that pot to master, or else I won't warm your wine again. The resigned tone in that voice made Su Ming think that his third senior brother had gone overboard. Eldest senior brother, don't worry. I'll definitely send half a pot to the old man. Ha ha. Huzi's face was alit with excitement. He quickly picked up the wine gourd and took a sniff of the alcoholic fragrance coming from within. An intoxicated look appeared on his face. Fourth, you just came to the mountain. It's a pity that I can't come out of isolation just yet. I can only do so after a few years. How about this? I'll give this to you. Use it to protect yourself. The gentle voice traveled forth once again, and a blue piece of ice abruptly flew out of the basin. It charged towards Su Ming and floated before him. The blue ball of fire sealed in the blue ice gave it a bewitching presence. Thank you, eldest senior brother. Su Ming quickly wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed before he put away the blue piece of ice. Just by the look of it, he could tell that this was something extraordinary. Huzi picked up his wine gourd and dragged Su Ming a few steps back before he shouted towards the basin, eldest senior brother, you should hurry back to your training. I already made calculations. You'll be exhaling that origin breath of yours 43 days later. When that time comes, I'll come find you again. We won't bother you anymore. Eldest senior brother, good luck. The heat spreading from the basin clearly halted for a brief moment, and a resigned sigh reached them from within the basin. Don't always work on getting drunk. Remember what the master told you before. While getting drunk is the method you found to clear your mind, this is just a process. What's important is the dream you have after you're drunk. The gentle voice echoed in the air. I know. We're leaving now. Hu Zi quickly left, but Su Ming's footsteps faltered. He looked towards the hot air spreading out from within the basin. Eldest senior brother, what is the skill you're practicing? Is it truly one of the skills taken from our master's second layer in the chamber? Did you see the arts and abilities written on the jades? There was a short period of silence from within the basin before the gentle voice came once again. You can't see what I see, because what I desire the most are skills. His eldest senior brother's voice vibrated in the air, just like how Su Ming's heart was shaking at that moment. When he was eventually dragged out of his eldest senior brother's isolation grounds by Hu Zi and arrived at the bottom of the 9th summit, he felt his mind going into such turmoil it felt as if there were waves crashing in his mind. He did not know how he left the place. In the shaken state he was in, he parted ways with his third senior brother and returned to his cave abode. He sat down cross-legged on the platform and looked at the world in the distance. However, what he saw was no longer important. He could not calm down. Nothing he saw could calm him down. Because my eldest senior brother desired skills, that's why when he saw the jades in the second layer, they were real to him. He got the skill he wanted and isolated himself to train and make himself stronger. And I wanted the map the most, that's why the berserker vessels in the first layer, the skills in the second layer, and even the ancient scrolls in the third layer were fake. The map was the only thing I could see. My eldest senior brother isolated himself to clear his mind and understand the meaning of creation. Perhaps the skill he obtained was just a part of it. To bring into being is the true meaning of creation. I wonder what my second senior brother obtained from Master's chamber. He chose to plant those plants because if he planted them on his own, that's also a form of bringing something into being. He's bringing life into being and using this method to train his mind and to understand this. As for my third senior brother, he enters sleep after he's drunk. Getting drunk is the process, and he dreams when he falls asleep. That is a start of him training his mind. Dreaming can also mean creating dreams. Su Ming understood now. He shuddered. At that moment, he saw the world lighting up in the distance. The sun was rising in the horizon. The sun was lighting up the land with an indescribable, shocking presence. The wind was traveling at a moderate speed and lifted Su Ming's hair. The sunlight cast him under a few different shades of colors. Su Ming slowly turned his head and looked towards the top of the mountain that was now illuminated by sunlight. He could vaguely see an old person standing there. That person was looking at the sun rising in the horizon as his clothes fluttered in the wind. Master, Su Ming mumbled. The words Tian Shiezi had told him that day appeared in Su Ming's mind once again. If you accept me as your master, then you'll understand someday that Freezing Sky Clan is nothing. Su Ming closed his eyes and immersed himself in his own understanding of the words. Time passed by slowly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. As the sun rose and set, Su Ming sat on the platform and remained unmoving in the midst of the wind and snow. Chapter 225. The person who came in the snowstorm. Su Ming lost his sense of time in that rather unfamiliar state. He had his eyes closed, and he looked as if he had lost his soul. His soul seemed to have left his body and fused together with the world. In his world, there was neither the sky nor the earth. There was only chaos that enveloped his mind like a thick layer of fog, causing him to be unable to see clearly, but his heart was still calm, so calm that even his heartbeat was beginning to grow faint. Snow fell on his hair and his clothes. The snow gradually accumulated on him, causing Su Ming to look like a snowman from afar. 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. The sun rose and set numerous times. Sunlight and moonlight fell on Su Ming's body alternatively and reflected off different shades of light on his body. Nonetheless, he still remained still and unmoving. Su Ming did not know about this, but at that moment, at the top of the 9th summit, the person he'd seen before he entered this state had not left. Tian Shiezi stood on the peak silently. He had been watching Su Ming sitting there from the very start, had been going through the past few days along with him, and he would continue staying there. As his master, he would only leave when Su Ming woke up. He knew that this state was an incredibly important process of life and metamorphosis for this particular disciple of his. This was a process that would grant him epiphany. Tian Xiezi looked at Su Ming in the distance as he mumbled under his breath, "All my disciples would experience their first epiphany at different points of time once they came under me." When his first disciple experienced his epiphany, he watched. When his second disciple experienced his epiphany, he watched. He still watched on the peak quietly when his third disciple experienced his epiphany. Right now, he was standing on the mountain just like the previous 3 times he had done so. He watched Su Ming gain his epiphany. During this process, he would not allow anyone to disturb his students. He was their master. He had to stretch out his arms and protect them with his body when they were weak. I look forward to what sort of method will dawn on you and allow you to clear your mind. A kind smile appeared on Tian Xiezi's face. In that smile was expectation. He would never forget the sight of this disciple of his crying when he saw the beast skin map in the chamber a few days ago. Just like how when he took in his first, second, and third disciples, the moment Su Ming called him his master, he treated Su Ming as his disciple. There was no need for him to acknowledge Su Ming as his disciple over time. Sometimes, people only needed that one particular feeling at that one particular moment to familiarize themselves with each other. Tian Xiezi continued watching. Su Ming's third senior brother, who loved calling himself Grandpa, who lay in his cave on the 9th summit with his wine gourd in his hand, drinking from it. He was already drunk. However, the state of drunkenness he was in for the past few days made it difficult for him to fall asleep. He would occasionally lift his head and look towards a particular direction. His line of sight might have been blocked by the stone wall of his cave, but if the wall was not there, then he would be able to see Su Ming sitting on that platform in the direction he looked. "My life is so difficult, but there's no help to it. He's my youngest junior brother. There's no way around it, but at least when I go out and fight next time, I'll have someone helping me." "Not bad, not bad at all," the third senior brother mumbled under his breath and grinned widely in a highly pleased manner. "HMPH, at least I'm smart. Youngest junior brother gained an understanding from my unwitting guidance. Let's see what sort of method he'll figure out. No good. What if he reaches an epiphany like eldest senior brother and isolates himself just like him? Then I'll just be lonely again. What if he comes to a realization and obtains the same weird habit as second senior brother and falls in love with planting stuff? That won't do either. Drinking. It'll be best if he comes to reach an epiphany where he needs to drink, then he can drink with me." The man scratched his head and anxiety appeared on his face. At that moment, there was a person who was crouching down among a large field of plants on the 9th summit. He was digging through the iced earth and planting some seeds in the ground. The man was wearing a white shirt. He had a handsome face and his eyes were bright. There was a smile on his face. He would occasionally lift his head and look towards where Su Ming was sitting. When he did so, his smile would widen. "Youngest junior brother, good luck. Whether or not you can become part of the 9th summit depends on whether you can reach an epiphany." That man was Su Ming's second senior brother. He did not go to sleep even though it was already daylight. In fact, he had not gone to sleep for the past few days, but would instead occasionally cast his eyes to where Su Ming was as he took care of his plants, an act that was out of ordinary for him. At the bottom of the 9th summit was a crack in the ice that led to the bottom of the mountain. It was Su Ming's eldest senior brother's isolation grounds. He was also looking in the same direction with a kind look in his eyes, as if he could see Su Ming. There was also eagerness in his gaze. Su Ming was sitting silently on the platform. There was still a layer of fog in his world. He could not see anything, only the fog surrounding him. He had no idea how long it had been. It might have just been several breaths, it might have been several days, or even much longer. He did not think about that in depth. He only kept his gaze fixed on the fog. He could see the vague shape of a person in that fog. That person seemed to be sitting cross-legged. Cold air gradually gathered around that person, but there was also a presence of heat within that cold air. This was how Su Ming felt about his eldest senior brother in his mind. With isolation, He could lock his body in a meditative state and focus his mind, which will lead to clearing his mind. By understanding the skill given to him, he could create his own path. This is my eldest senior brother, Su Ming mumbled. This was what he understood about his eldest senior brother. I can achieve this state as well, but if I choose this path because I saw it, then it's not creation, I'll just be walking on someone else's path. I'll be walking in my eldest senior brother's shadow. Su Ming was silent for a long time before he shook his head slowly. Slowly but surely, right before his eyes, another picture appeared in the fog in his world. However, only Su Ming could see that picture. If anyone else was in his world right then and looked at the fog, they would only see fog. They would not be able to see anything else. It might look like fog, but in truth, those were Su Ming's thoughts. Within the new picture, Su Ming saw his second senior brother. He saw the plants on the 9th summit, and saw a power that created life. By allowing the flowers to grow to the peak of perfection, he could reach the peak of perfection of his mind. The lives of these plants were given by the world, but through the second senior brother's hands, this also becomes a type of creation. Second senior brother seems to turn into another person at night and takes away the plants he creates. That's because since he was the one who gave life to the plants, he can also destroy them with his hands. Su Ming trembled. In his state of reaching epiphany, he suddenly understood some of his second senior brother's actions. His thoughts might not be correct, but it was what Su Ming understood. This sort of creation has reached an incredibly profound state, second senior brother, Su Ming mumbled. He fell silent for a moment, but still chose to shake his head again. This path still isn't suitable for me to answer Master's question on what is creation. Su Ming looked at the fog. In truth, he already had an answer for Tian Xiezi's question. However, he could only keep the answer in his heart. He could not say it out loud. If he did, then it would be wrong. Eldest senior brother's answer should be, I am creation. Second senior brother's answer should be the same. Perhaps the words are slightly different for third senior brother, but the meaning should be the same. They can answer it this way because they found the way to clear their minds and find their own creation. I can't say it, because I haven't found the answer. If I imitate second senior brother's path, then I'll never be able to say this, unless I find my own path. Su Ming shook his head. The fog before him changed once again. This time, in the picture that no one else could see, he saw his third senior brother. He had a drunken look in his eyes as he drank wine and lay on the ground. There was a foolish smile on his lips, and drool flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Su Ming could hear faint snores. He was dreaming about a world that made him happy. In that world, there were countless people drinking wine with him, and there were also countless people who were waiting for him to go and hit them. His happy expression made Su Ming snicker uncontrollably. He could already imagine that his third senior brother gained his epiphany the easiest and his epiphany was the simplest. In fact, there was a high possibility that his third senior brother did not have any sort of epiphany. It was just that when he fell asleep once he was drunk, he dreamed, and from then onwards, he naturally found the way to clear his mind. If someday, third senior brother's dreams could become true, then his achievements will not be any less than second senior brother's. As for eldest senior brother, I still don't really understand his path. Su Ming eventually chose to shake his head once again. He would not walk on his third senior brother's path either. I wonder what was Master's epiphany. Su Ming had no clue, but he did not think about it either. Gradually, the fog before him started changing drastically. Its change was a projection of Su Ming's thoughts. He was thinking about his own epiphany and his own method to clear his mind. Days passed by. Very soon, it was already the 27th day since Su Ming sat down on the platform. During the 27 days, sometimes snow would fall from the sky, but the volume was light. Yet even so, the snow still made Su Ming look as if his body had fused together with the snowstorm beside him. Once 27 days passed by and the morning of the 28th day arrived. The morning sun was accompanied by a great blizzard. Blizzards were not uncommon in Freezing Sky Clan. There would be blizzards once every few days. As of then, as a blizzard raged in the land, and moaning, cold wind whistled through the sky, lifting up a large amount of snow in a seeming attempt to cover the entire world, the blizzard looked like a large, ancient beast that had its claws lifted then slammed them on the ground. As the blizzard raged in the air, a person walked towards the bottom of the ninth summit from the distance. That person wore a thick bamboo hat and a straw cape that covered his entire body. A shocking presence spread out faintly from within his body as he walked in the blizzard, causing the snow and wind to seem afraid of coming close to him. They rolled back from his body, causing him to look like an earth dragon coming closer to the place. Su Ming. That person's voice was freezing cold and he spoke with a ghastly tone under the ninth summit. Chapter 226, The Hands of Creation. There are a lot of rumors regarding Freezing Sky Clan's ninth summit. Since I'm here today, I might as well see whether those rumors are true, the person wearing the bamboo hat said with a cold sneer at the foot of the ninth summit. I don't understand just how this unassuming Su Ming could make senior brother Sima pay so much heed to him. He even sent me a long-distance letter and used that one favor I owe him to make me come here and take away something from him. The moment the person took a step up the ninth summit through the blizzard, his entire body seemed to have blended together with the snow. The blizzard in the sky suddenly turned into a human face and let out a low, savage growl at the ninth summit. That growl became the wind that lifted up the snow. The moment the person stepped on the mountain, the entire ninth summit seemed to tremble. Su Ming's third senior brother who was drinking in his cave opened his eyes, surprised. He quickly took a few steps forward and bent his body down to exit his cave abode before looking down the mountain. That's Ziche from the second summit. He's placed ninth on the ranking board among the disciples on the Great Frozen Plains in Freezing Sky Clan. Why did he appear on the ninth summit? Could it be to fight me? But I didn't offend him. Hu Zi was momentarily stunned. He scratched his head. In the midst of his surprise, his expression suddenly changed, because at that moment, Ziche, who was dressed in a straw cape and bamboo hat, took his second step since up the ninth summit. The instant his foot fell, his body suddenly appeared before Hu Zi. His appearance was so sudden it looked as if he had just forced his way through. The moment he stood a few hundred feet before Hu Zi, a monstrous presence erupted forth with a bang. That presence made Hu Zi quickly take a few dozen steps backwards. The wine gourd in his hand also shattered with a bang. Trash. Ziche's face could not be seen under the straw cape and bamboo hat, but a chilling glint appeared in his eyes, and the shocking presence caused the ice around him to show signs of cracking. It was especially so for the land behind him. The savage human face that was formed from the blizzard let out a roar, and more snow gathered in the sky, as if it wanted to bury the entire ninth summit underneath. Ziche cast Hu Zi a cold glare and took his third step. The moment he took the third step, he disappeared from Hu Zi's sight. Because he had left, he did not see that Hu Zi was staring at the shattered wine gourd on the ground at that moment. Red filled his sight and viciousness appeared in his eyes. How dare you break your grandpa Hu's gourd? Hu Zi lifted his head swiftly and let out a loud shout towards the sky. He turned into a long arc and charged towards Ziche, who was leaving. At that moment, two people were running out of the seventh summit towards the ninth summit. The two of them were women and pleasing to the eye. One of them was Han Kangzi. There was worry on her face as she ran at full speed towards the ninth summit. The woman beside her wore a yellow robe. Her petite, oval-shaped face gave her an elegant and beautiful air. It was a strikingly similar look to how Han Kangzi usually looked like. There was a lazy expression on her face. When she saw just how nervous and worried Han Kangzi was, she teased her, "Junior sister Fang, just what sort of person is this Su Ming for you to pay so much attention to him? Could it be?" The woman's voice was very attractive. She chuckled after her own words. "Junior sister, this isn't the time for this." Han Kangzi traveled incredibly quickly, charging towards the ninth summit. All right, I won't say anything more. Don't worry, Ziche may be wild, but he's not a bad person. I'll just ask him not to cause trouble to Su Ming. He's your younger brother, of course you'll be siding with him." There was a hint of a complaint in Han Kangzi's words. The woman behind her smiled, but did not mind. She simply continued trying to soothe Han Kangzi with a gentle voice. They gradually got closer to the ninth summit as they spoke. However, right at the moment they got closer, they clearly felt the power of a blizzard charging towards them and forcing them to slow down. At that moment, both of them also saw the savage human face formed by the blizzard, which was previously obscured from their sight by the ninth summit. The face was howling at the ninth summit. Han Kangzi's expression immediately changed. The woman beside her also turned grave. He activated the art for his berserker mark. The woman took a step forward and charged towards the ninth summit in the face of the blizzard. Han Kangzi bit her bottom lip and followed behind her with worry. On the ninth summit, Ziche, who was dressed in a straw cape and a bamboo hat, arrived 300 feet away from where Su Ming sat the moment with his third step. He stood there with a cold and detached expression as his gaze fell on Su Ming's body. Just another piece of trash. The ninth summit is not as spoken in the rumors, Ziche said coldly and lifted his right hand. But just as he was about to point towards Su Ming, at that moment, Su Ming was completely unaware of what was happening outside. He was immersed in his own world. The fog he saw was currently raging and tumbling furiously. He thought he saw a faint shadow of something within. A feeling akin to epiphany gradually formed in his heart. Just let me see a little clearer, he mumbled. He had a strong feeling that if he could just see clearly, then he would be able to find the answer, and he would obtain the right to answer just what was the meaning of creation. As Ziche lifted his right hand in the world outside Su Ming's mind, the world let out a loud rumble around the platform Su Ming had seated himself. The giant blizzard that had turned into the savage human face appeared in the air just to Su Ming's side, and it was approaching quickly. The giant blizzard brought with it an earth-shaking presence that did not just intend to bury Su Ming underneath, but also the entire ninth summit. That sight even created a false impression that this blizzard was a work of nature, not due to a person using a divine ability. Ziche did not intend to let Su Ming live. If he had not joined the ninth summit, but joined any other summit and became a true Freezing Sky Clan disciple, then Ziche would find his hands tied. After all, they would belong to the same school, and the rules within the school were very strict, and it would be difficult for him to act in the day like this. Yet Su Ming entered the ninth summit that belonged to Freezing Sky Clan, but at the same time not. The disciples here did not have to follow the rules set by Freezing Sky Clan, but because of that they were also not protected by the rules of the school. That was why Ziche thought about killing Su Ming without even a word and subsequently throwing his corpse to Sima Xin, who was rushing back to Freezing Sky Clan. To him, the man who always referred to himself as Grandpa who was trash. There was no need for him to be careful of him. As for the person who loved planting things, he was a very effeminate and weak person to Ziche. Even the eldest senior brother of the ninth summit was just a coward who loved isolating himself. Ziche had heard about him before. When disciples from other summits came to teach that trash who a lesson, his other two senior brothers did not act at all. The trash who loved planting stuff would especially pretend to be asleep to avoid trouble and let his junior brother fend for himself. In fact, there was even one time when he saw such a thing happen when he was passing by the ninth summit. At that time, he was filled with disdain and contempt towards the ninth summit. The only person he was wary of was the old man, Tian Xiezi. However, he had already made preparations before he came to this place. He was the second summit's prodigy and his master placed high value on him. In his mind, if Tian Xiezi attacked him without care for their differences in status, then his master would definitely not stand by and watch. With all these preparations, he was certain that nothing could go wrong. He lifted his right hand and readied himself to point at Su Ming so that the human face in the blizzard could swallow him up and let him achieve his goal for coming back this time. Yet at the very moment he was about to swing his right hand down, a gentle voice traveled forth from behind him. That voice was very serene, as if the speaker was talking to a friend, and there was no hint of any anger in it. "Brother, you're stepping on my flowers, that's not good." At the very moment that voice came, Ziche shuddered. A serious look appeared in his eyes, which were covered by the bamboo hat. With his current power, if anyone appeared around him, he would notice them immediately. This sort of thing, where a person appeared beside him and he did not notice, should only be possible for Tian Xiezi alone on the ninth summit. Yet the person's manner of speech made it clear that he was not Tian Xiezi. "There's only ice under my feet. There aren't any plants." Ziche let out a cold harumph. He did not turn back, but he did not try pointing towards Su Ming with his right hand either. "Look again." The gentle voice got closer to him, and a handsome man in white gradually approached Ziche from behind. There was a smile on his lips and his face was kind. He walked to Ziche's side, went past him, then stood before the sitting Su Ming. Ziche was silent. He did not lower his head, but he could clearly feel green grass and flowers growing under him when the man walked past, and he was stepping on them. Shock rose from the bottom of his heart. He looked at the gentle-looking man before him. He'd seen this person before and knew that he was the second disciple in the 9th summit. Yet he never expected that the person who he thought was trash would make him feel shaken. A sense of danger, something that was rarely felt by him, surged forth abruptly in his body. Ziche was silent, but after a moment, he let out a cold harumph and took a swift and huge step forward with his right foot. With his lifted right hand, he also pointed towards the man blocking him from Su Ming without any hesitation. Yet the very instant he pointed with his right hand, the bamboo hat on his head shattered abruptly and turned into an innumerable amount of pieces that tumbled backwards, revealing a long-haired man who looked to be in his 30s. The straw cape he wore also burst apart with a bang and turned into smithereens, revealing the black robe he wore underneath. A mouthful of blood spilled out from Ziche's mouth and he started trembling viciously. An intimidating pressure that shocked him spread out from the smiling man standing before him like the winds in spring. No one else could feel that pressure. In fact, from Ziche's perspective, this might not even be pressure. This was a type of stress formed by gaze and also a temperament that created an indescribable but still spine-chilling terror within him. The source of that terror came from the hands of the man standing before him. Those ordinary hands, those hands that were not lifted but placed by his sides, touching his sleeves, seemed to hold the keys to his life and death. Those were the hands of creation. Chapter 227, Understood. Ziche shuddered and shock appeared on his face. He turned pale instantly and instinctively staggered a few steps back. Once he coughed out a mouthful of blood, he quickly retreated and rose into the air to leave the mountain immediately. His heart pounded and raced against his chest. Terror had replaced all his thoughts. He had never expected that such a frightening person would exist on 9th summit of Freezing Sky Clan. Those terrifying hands, those hands that seemed to control life itself, those hands that made him feel shaken to the core and made him injure himself badly the moment he made a move. He left just like that. Su Ming's second senior brother continued smiling as he looked at Ziche. His smile was gentle and no hint of anger or happiness could be found beneath it. Yet the moment he spoke, all the plants in the 9th summit shuddered at the same time. I didn't act last time because you didn't touch the 9th summit's bottom line. It doesn't really matter that who Z gets hit. He's built tough, he'll get better if he just takes a nap after getting hit. Su Ming's second senior brother spoke with a smile, and as he did so, the plants in the 9th summit trembled. A shocking presence erupted forth. There was an endless amount of life force within that presence, and it came simultaneously from all the plants in the mountain. Ziche's expression changed drastically. As he ran, he groaned in his heart. All the other people from the 9th summit may be trash, but the man before him was not. He was as terrifying as a monster. With just a breath, he drew out the force of all the plants. This isn't a normal berserker art, this is. Ziche sucked in a sharp breath, and as he retreated, the giant human face formed by the blizzard behind him gathered together and let out a faint growl towards the second senior brother. But this time, you spoiled a lot of my plants, broke Uzi's gourd, and even came to hurt my youngest junior brother. These aren't good. Second senior brother sighed softly. The moment he said, "Not good," all the plants in the 9th summit floated into the air and with an indescribable speed, they covered the sky and earth before charging towards Ziche. Ziche was in shock. The snow human face behind him immediately surrounded him, attempting to fight back as they retreated, but the moment the snow face touched the innumerable plants, it exploded with a loud bang. It exploded and the world rumbled, turning into mountains of snow that fell down. At the same moment, Ziche, who was wrapped inside the face, coughed out once again. His face immediately turned pale, and before he could retreat once more, the plants charged straight towards him and instantly surrounded him. Some of them even crept into his body, causing Ziche to look like a person made of plants. He trembled, and when he fell face down, he was wrapped by the plants and pulled back to the 9th summit. I won't kill you, I'll punish you instead to repair my third senior brother's gourd at the 9th summit, then to help me check who is stealing my plants at night. Listen to the other people in the mountain during the other times, like making sure my youngest junior brother is safe when he leaves the mountain. Second senior brother retained his gentle demeanor as he smiled and explained. Do this for 3 years. At that moment, Huzi let out a loud roar and stormed out of the cave. He grabbed the plant-covered but not unconscious Ziche and lifted him up with a ferocious smile. You jerk! How dare you break your grandpa Hu's gourd? Just you wait and see how I'll deal with you. DMNU, I'll drag you into my dreams. There was anger in Ziche's eyes, but he had already lost all his strength. When he was lifted by Huzi, who he had deemed as trash previously, a feeling of humiliation spread through his entire body. At that moment, 2 long arcs arrived from the sky, before they revealed Han Kangzi and her companion within. The 2 of them stood in midair and were stunned for a moment. We have guests. Are you here to visit my youngest junior brother? Second senior brother looked at the 2 beautiful women in the sky with an even gentler smile on his face. Fang Kang Lan remained stunned for another moment before she quickly bowed towards second senior brother. Greetings, second senior brother. The woman beside her had a steely expression on her face. She glared at the gentle-looking second senior brother standing beside Su Ming, then looked at Ziche who was being dragged into the distance by Huzi, but she did not say a word. We seldom see such pretty ladies on the 9th summit. Looks like my youngest junior brother has a lot of luck with ladies, but you came at a bad time. He's currently training. Why don't you stay here and help me take care of him? Second senior brother winked and laughed. With that one laugh, Fang Kang Lan immediately blushed. It's not what it looks like, she quickly explained. At that moment, the woman with the oval-shaped face glared at second senior brother. With a cold harumph, she turned around and walked away. Fang Kang Lan hesitated for a moment, looked at Su Ming, who had his eyes closed and was meditating, then at her clearly livid senior sister, and then shot an apologetic look to second senior brother. Since Su Ming isn't in danger, then, I'll be leaving first. Second senior brother, when he wakes up, please tell him. As Fang Kang Lan spoke, she saw the teasing look on second senior brother's face and blushed again. She quickly made her leave and went after her senior sister as if she was chasing something. Second senior brother looked at the 2 leaving figures and shook his head before looking at Su Ming again. Just when he was about to feel moved, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked towards the sky in the distance once again. There was an old man wearing a purple-red long robe walking forward with a calm expression on his face in the sky in the distance. He was alone, but as he got closer, the wind around him froze. An intimidating presence spread out and covered every inch of the plants and the ice on the 9th summit. Ugh, I knew it. Once I hit the young one, the old one immediately popped out. Master, I can't deal with this one, you'll have to do it. Second senior brother smiled and sat beside Su Ming. Youngest junior brother, how is that you already offended others when you just came? Are you waking up already? There was a puzzled look on second senior brother's face when he looked towards Su Ming, but he suddenly smiled, and there was eagerness hidden within that smile. I wonder what method you found to clear your mind, second senior brother mumbled. Beside him, wisps of fog seeped out of Su Ming's pores and gradually spread around him. The fog tumbled around in an illusionary state before it gradually took form. In Su Ming's mind, the fog that covered the world he saw was thinning out, causing his sight to no longer be obscured and allowing him to see the world behind the fog. No, it wasn't a world he saw, it was a painting. The painting was slowly filled with mountains, water, grass, trees, and people. Gradually, a sort of epiphany formed within his mind. My answer is that I will bring things into being myself. I am creation, Su Ming mumbled. He understood it. In the sky of the physical world was the old man in the purple-red long robe calmly getting closer. He stood in the air beyond the 9th summit. There was no sign of any emotion in his eyes as he stood there and stared at Tian Xiezi standing at the top of the 9th summit. Tian Xiezi, let go of my disciple. The purple-red robed man's low and deep voice reverberated in the sky. Chapter 228, Insolent Brat. That's Uncle Master to you. What an insolent brat. Didn't your master tell you about my status? Besides those old folks in the sky, Who else has a higher status than me in Freezing Sky Clan? Even the head preceptor has to call me his uncle master. You're of the same seniority as the head preceptor, don't you know how to address me? Boy, let me just point out which rules you broke by offending your seniors. You broke the 2nd, 5th, and the 7th rules of the school. Tian Xiezi yawned on the 9th summit of Freezing Sky Clan and spoke lazily. There was a lackadaisical tone to his voice, and it did not bear the low and deep quality of the purple-red-robed old man's voice, and it did not travel too far either. The old man wearing the purple-red long robe stood calmly in the air and watched Tian Xiezi standing on the top of the 9th summit. If it had not been completely necessary, he would not have wanted to come to the 9th summit. It was not because he held any form of respect towards the rumors regarding Tian Xiezi, but because Tian Xiezi's status was simply too high in the school. He was silent for a moment before he wrapped his fist in his palm and greeted Tian Xiezi. Greetings to Uncle Master from Yulong Zi. That's more like it. I doubt that you were born when I came to this mountain. You can't be so rude. Pay more attention next time, understand? Tian Xiezi stroked his beard and nodded towards the old man in the purple-red long robe. Then, Uncle Master, please give me my disciple back. I'd like to take him away, the old man in the purple-red long robe said, remaining calm and seeming to not have heard Tian Xiezi's words. Oh, do you disagree with the punishment dealt out by your 2nd senior brother to your disciple? Tian Xiezi put on a surprised look. The old man remained silent. He had to accept the fact that all the people's status in the 9th summit were raised exponentially due to Tian Xiezi. For example, the man who injured his disciple, that person, was indeed of the same seniority as he was. It was difficult to tell whether he was the senior brother or junior brother for the time being, though. Tian Xiezi, I don't have time to play with you. I only asked you for one thing, are you going to let Ziche go? The old man frowned, and his expression gradually turned cold. He had already paid his respects, so even if he spoke this way right now, no one would find fault with him. Ha, are you trying to scare me? I'm not letting him go. I won't. Tian Xiezi glared and put on a domineering air. The old man's face turned dark and he let out a cold harumph. He did not attack, but that one harumph alone sounded like thunder rumbling, and it caused the entire 9th summit to tremble, the weather to change, the clouds and wind to tumble backwards, and thin cracks to spread through the ice on the 9th summit. Tian Xiezi widened his eyes and quickly took a few steps back from the top of the mountain. He let out a shrill cry, and that cry was so distressed it was enough to make those who heard pity him. Hu Zi was in his own cave. He had long since brought Ziche back with him and had by then thrown him to the side before crouching down and starting to drink while laughing viciously with ill intent. Tian Xiezi's shrill cries echoing in his ears made Hu Zi lift his head to look at the stone wall above him, and an odd expression appeared on his face. Go on pretending, old man, that's what you do best anyway. Don't think that your grandpa don't think that another person's family's grandpa who doesn't know that you wore white today. That shrill cry spread through the entire 9th summit, similarly falling into the 2nd senior brother's ears, who was sitting beside Su Ming. 2nd brother had his head lowered and was toying with the plants before him as if he had heard nothing. Master, I saw you wearing white today. 2nd senior brother shook his head with a gentle look on his face, as if he was whispering to the plants before him. At the same time, in the basin located deep in the cracks in the ice right under the 9th summit, a weak mumble sounded in the originally quiet place. The master was wearing white today, wasn't he? That voice belonged to the eldest senior brother. As Tian Xiezi was crying out in distress and retreating on the top of the 9th summit, he saw the old man in the purple-red long robe walking towards him and he quickly let out another piercing cry. Xiao Hu, save me. I promise you I won't ask you for your wine anymore. Hu Zi drank his wine in his cave abode and glared at Ziche lying before him. He swatted Ziche's head, and the force was so great it made the man jolt. Anger burned within him and he glared at Hu Zi. Ha, how dare you glare at your grandpa Hu? I'll kill you. Hu Zi seemed to have found a way to not think about his master crying out in distress. He stretched out his arm and swatted Ziche's head again. Once Tian Xiezi shouted out those words on the mountain, he found that the old man had already closed in on him. He had even landed on the ninth summit, and the moment his feet landed on the ground, a loud boom came from the ninth summit. Second, I'm warning you, if you don't save me, then I'll pluck out all your plants from the mountain. The second senior brother sitting by Su Ming's side seemed to not have heard anything and touched the plants before him as he said in a gentle whisper, "Go on and pluck them, then. I'll just plant new flowers after you pluck them away. It'll be fine, won't it, youngest junior brother?" Second senior brother lifted his head and cast a glance at Su Ming with a smile. The old man in the purple-red robe from the second summit was looking at Tian Shiezi screaming with a cold look. He then frowned and lifted his right leg to move forward. "First disciple, why are you still isolating yourself at this moment? Do you only know how to isolate yourself? Your master is about to be finished. If you don't come out now, I'll get Xiaohu to go to you to warm up his wine every single day." The basin deep under the ninth summit remained silent. Eldest senior brother who had chosen this place as his isolation grounds also chose to pretend not to hear anything as he immersed himself in his meditation. However, Tian Xiezi's voice was simply too distressing, and a moment later, a sigh came from within the basin. "Master, stop fooling around." The voice originated within the basin and spread outwards. In an instant, it reverberated all through the ninth summit and traveled into Hu Zi's ears, causing him to pause in delivering another slap. The voice also landed in the second senior brother's ears and a bright glint appeared briefly in his eyes. It also traveled to the old man walking towards Tian Xiezi. The old man faltered in his footsteps and his heart started beating uncontrollably. His expression changed instantly, because a wave of heat that came out of nowhere suddenly fell on his body and caused the air all around him to immediately start distorting. Yet this was not his doing. It was due to the voice that had formed a ripple around him, one that made him feel shaken. He seemed to have heard low growls of a ferocious beast echoing from the distortion, but that distortion could not be heard by anyone else. Only the old man himself could hear it clearly. That voice made him don on a grave expression. The sound of creation. The old man's pupils shrank. However, the sound only appeared for an instant before slowly fading away. The distortion around the old man's body also disappeared without a trace. The moment Tian Xiezi heard the sound, surprised delight appeared on his face, but his expression soon changed to one of anger when the sound dissipated. "Rascals! You three rascals! If I knew about this, then I wouldn't have taken you people in as my disciples. How could you not help your own master at such an important moment? You make me so mad. Hey, Junior, don't force my hand now. I'm telling you, if I make a move, you'll run away immediately like a dog with its tail between its legs." Tian Xiezi lifted his right hand and placed it onto his bosom. His gaze gradually grew stern as he looked at the old man in purple robes. As he grew stern, an intimidating pressure gradually gathered in his body, causing the old man in purple robes, who was still shocked by the sound of creation, to also become stern. He had not really regarded the ninth summit too highly. This was, in fact, the first time he came to the ninth summit. Yet now that he had experienced the string of events that happened to him, he could not help but recall the rumors circulating around Freezing Sky Clan about the ninth summit. The old man in purple robes was silent for a moment before he spoke in a low voice. "Uncle Master, if you release my disciple, then I'll leave immediately and won't enter the ninth summit again. If not, then I'll just have to check whether the rumors regarding you are true. The sound of creation alone, it's still nothing to worry about." As he spoke, the old man in purple robes walked towards Tian Xiezi. His footsteps were not quick, but as he moved, a presence that grew increasingly stronger spread out from his body. An illusionary picture started appearing faintly in the sky and was quickly gaining physical form. "You made me do this. Behold my enchanted treasure." Tian Xiezi retreated once again and drew his right hand from his bosom swiftly. Something was in his hand. It was a plate. "Insolent brat, do you know what this is?" As Tian Hanzi shouted out, the old man in purple robes came to an abrupt halt and stared at the plate in Tian Xiezi's hands. That plate had a dark purple hue and let off a pure, freezing chill. It did not seem like a counterfeit, and neither would anyone dare to make a counterfeit of that plate in Freezing Sky Clan. When he remembered Tian Xiezi's status, the old man's expression started experiencing drastic changes. Sometimes, He would look sullen, sometimes glum, and sometimes resigned. All these emotions blended together and eventually turned into a long sigh filled with mixed feelings. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply towards Tian Xie. I, De Long Zi, disciple of Freezing Sky Clan, greet the clan master's plate. The status of the owner of the plate is akin to the status of the clan master himself, of course I will recognize it. HMPH, how dare you force me to bring out this plate? Let me tell you, I grabbed the 9th summit in the past using this plate, didn't your master tell you? Ah, whatever, looks like you're not your master's beloved disciple either, or else he definitely would have told you something so important. You seem rather pitiful, so how about this? Give me a few million stone coins and I'll turn a blind eye towards your offense. Tian Xie lifted his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke arrogantly. The old man in purple robes' breathing quickened. Veins gradually popped out on his face, but when he saw the plate in Tian Xie's hands, he quelled down that anger and wrapped his fist in his palm to salute Tian Xie. Yes, sir. After saying that, he immediately turned around and turned into a long arc that left the 9th summit in an instant. He was afraid that if he stayed even a moment longer, he would be unable to force down that miserable feeling in his heart. He finally understood why those of the same seniority as his rarely went to the 9th summit, and it was especially so for the lords of the summits. Most of them would choose to travel around the 9th summit. De Long Zi himself seldom took notice of other things. He might be one of the powerful berserkers in Freezing Sky Clan and a member of the 2nd summit, but he was not the lord of the 2nd summit. Besides, he had been staying in the great tribe of Freezing Sky most of the time and only came back to stay in the school recently. When De Long Zi left the 9th summit, Su Ming, who was sitting on the platform cross-legged, slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 229, The Picture of the Blood Moon and Dark Mountain. Right at the moment Su Ming opened his eyes, a brilliant light appeared in his eyes, but that light faded away in an instant. At the same time, the thick layer of snow that had accumulated on his body quietly floated away and surrounded him before it started circling around him slowly. Second senior brother sat by his side with a smile as he watched with full attention. At that moment, Tian Xie, who had been putting away the plate with a prideful look, also noticed the changes and looked towards Su Ming. The youth seemed very different from how he usually was, and Tian Xie slowly grew stern. At the same time, Hu Zi, who was originally in his cave abode, walked out and stood outside to look in the direction of the platform at the mountainside. An attentive gaze was also trained towards that direction from the basin in the ice layer under the 9th summit. Su Ming opened his eyes, but there was only calmness within his gaze. That calmness was different from the one he'd showed previously. This was a stillness within his mind, a stillness that would remain unperturbed even if the mountain crumbled and the earth shattered before him. The things that allowed him to remain in such a state of calm were the snow flowers before him. As they danced around him, Su Ming slowly lifted his right hand, and they immediately gathered there, turning into a snow brush between his fingers. When Su Ming held the pen, he drew a stroke in the air before him. He took a few more strokes, and snow would float to the places the tip of the brush passed through. With each brush stroke, the air before him turned into a canvas, and a mountain appeared on the mountain. The mountain's lines were formed by snow and floated in midair. It looked like an ordinary picture, but if someone focused their attention on it for too long, they would start feeling that the mountain was alive. When he drew this mountain, Su Ming's heart was in a serene state. It was a serenity that he had never experienced before. It was one that had never appeared in his heart ever since he left Dark Mountain. In that serene state, Su Ming did not notice that his second senior brother was sitting behind him, neither did he know that Hu Zi was also looking at him from the distance, nor did he know that his eldest senior brother was concerned over him in the basin under the mountain, much less did he notice the old man in white robes on the top of the building. All his attention was focused on the pen in his right hand and the snow that was drawing out the scene that he wanted to draw the most in his heart. He was not in a trance but seemed like he was. He did not close his eyes to enter that strange state, yet he seemed to be deeply immersed in that state and refused to get out of it. Creation, Picture Creation 1, this is the answer he gives me. The foolish act Tian Xie had put up when he was facing the old man in purple robes was gone without a trace. There was instead an indescribable air of wisdom around him as he looked at his fourth disciple. What my eldest understood was sound creation. That's why he chose to isolate himself and go into a state of silence, away from the noise around him. Once he gets rid of all of them, what is left is his heart. That's why he walks the path of sound of creation. What my second understood was flower creation. He uses flowers and plants as his creation and has turned his hands into the hands of creation, which allows him to take control of life and death. What my third understood was the word creation itself. The act of dreaming itself is creation. I didn't expect my fourth disciple would gain an epiphany on a fourth type of change, picture creation, Tian Xiezi mumbled and his eyes brightened up. On the platform, Su Ming looked at the mountain he drew and he continued drawing with the brush in his right hand. With each brush stroke, the 5 summits on a mountain became clearer. Dark Mountain was drawn. At the moment Dark Mountain was drawn, the mountain mark on Su Ming's face appeared faintly, as if it was shining, and it caused his power to show signs of changing, though he did not know about it. Right at the moment Su Ming finished drawing the mountain, he drew a long line across it with the snow brush in his hands. That long line was a ghastly sight. It was like a sharp sword that exuded a shocking amount of killing intent. The moment that killing intent appeared, Tian Xiezi's expression immediately changed. At the same time, Su Ming's second senior brother, who had been keeping watch over him all this while, also became serious. Hu Zi had the same reaction outside the cave abode. Even the eldest senior brother who was in isolation also started breathing rapidly the moment he noticed the long line. What incredible killing intent! Su Ming did not notice this. He was only following his heart and calmly creating a picture to draw out his own life. When his brush reached the end of the long line, he slowly started drawing out the Dark Mountain tribe within the berserker mark on his body. The flowers, trees, and houses gradually appeared before him and started glowing in the air with his berserker mark. He did not know how much time had passed by, but the moment he finished drawing the entire Dark Mountain tribe, the brush in his hand stopped moving. The picture in the air before him had mountains, plants, stones, wood, houses that stuck together, and fences that formed a seemingly complete picture of a tribe. It was identical to his berserker mark. Yet Su Ming's hand remained lifted, even though he had stopped drawing. It was as if he did not know what he should draw next. His eyes remained serene, but there was a lost look in the depths of that serenity. A long time passed by. Sound creation, flower creation, picture creation, all of these are creating something from nothing. There is shock in silence, a realm within a mirror. Youngest junior brother, I think that there's something lacking in that picture. Second senior brother's kind voice floated gently into Su Ming's ears. Su Ming was silent. The sky gradually grew dark. The moon appeared in the sky and moonlight scattered on the ground and glowed with a silver light, causing people to feel cold just by looking at it. No one was asleep on the 9th summit on that night. All of them were watching Su Ming. They knew that this was an incredibly important day for him. It was especially so since he had clearly found a method to clear his mind, but he was still a little lost and his understanding was not complete. This was a critical moment for Su Ming. Perhaps there were only a few from Freezing Sky Clan who were not from the 9th summit who understood this. Yet those on the 9th summit walked on a path that was different from others. They knew just how important the first epiphany was for this path. As the darkness in the sky started changing and light reappeared in the horizon once again, the moon was about to be hidden away. It was just a shadow remaining in the sky when Su Ming's right hand, which had stopped in midair for a long time, suddenly started moving once again. At the moment his right hand started moving, Tian Xiezi's expression immediately became grave on the mountain. The second senior brother, third senior brother, and eldest senior brother, who remained in isolation, also had the same expressions on their faces. They saw Su Ming's right hand move, drawing a circle with the brush right above the picture of Dark Mountain that was drawn on the air as there was a canvas before him. That circle was simple. It was done with one stroke, but that simple stroke took Su Ming an entire night to finish. Right at the moment he drew it, Su Ming's body trembled viciously, and a circle also gradually appeared right beside the mark of Dark Mountain on his face. At the same time, Su Ming's power started circulating within his body with a bang. It reached its maximum point in an instant and his power started showing signs that it had reached the peak of the initial stage of awakening. It felt as if he just needed one more step and he could reach the middle stage of awakening. At that moment, the circle on the canvas Su Ming created before him started glowing with a piercing light. That light was red, and the circle seemed as if it was burning before it turned into a moon. The blood moon. The burning blood moon. This was the first berserker mark Su Ming gave up when he was in a trance. At this moment, it was drawn on his very first canvas in his serene state. Right at the moment he finished drawing the blood moon, the presence within the canvas changed abruptly and turned into the picture of the blood moon and dark mountain. A shocking amount of killing intent came from the picture of the blood moon and dark mountain, and the strength of that murderous intent made even second senior brother's face become grave. Hu Zi shuddered outside his cave abode and mumbled out a few sentences under his breath. As for the eldest senior brother, he remained silent for a moment before he sighed. Looks like the 9th summit won't be peaceful any longer, but since he's my youngest junior brother, it's fine. When the picture of the blood moon and dark mountain appeared, it made Su Ming tremble and his power broke through his previous limits. Banging sounds echoed within his body, and his level of cultivation reached the middle stage of the awakening realm from the initial stage. One epiphany, one picture, and one blood moon. These things changed Su Ming's mark and made his training reach a breakthrough. My disciples don't need any skills or abilities. They will only need to understand the rules of creation lying in the world once they find the way to clear their mind. Tian Xiezi's words rose back in Su Ming's mind. At that moment, he finally understood what the old man was trying to teach him. This was a completely different path that trained the mind. The 9th summit did not practice any skills, neither did they learn any divine abilities, but they honed their minds. Tian Xiezi was silent as he stood on the mountain. After a long while, he turned around slowly and walked towards the sealed hall. He may have seemed to be staggering, but his footsteps were stable. He had turned around, so no one could see the sad determination on his face. Master, I'll prove to you that the path we berserkers take is wrong. You're wrong. You're all wrong. After Tian Xiezi left, the picture before Su Ming gradually returned to being snow and scattered on the platform on the 9th summit as the serenity within his eyes disappeared and he truly woke up. Youngest junior brother, you have quite a nice place here. Do you mind if I plant some of my flowers on your platform? Right at the moment Su Ming woke up, his second senior brother's gentle voice reached his ears. Su Ming was momentarily stunned, and he immediately turned around to see his second senior brother, who had appeared at some unknown point of time behind him. He quickly stood up and looked at the plants that now filled his platform. Second senior brother, could you leave a place for me to meditate? Oh, all right, I'll leave a small spot for you. Second senior brother winked at him and gave him a gentle smile. Oh, that's right, when you were trying to understand those words, I caught something living for you. That thing's with your third senior brother. When you have time, go take a look. Also, a pretty disciple niece came to search for you. If you have the chance to see her, remember to ask her for the name of the lass beside her for me. Chapter 230. Don't waste. A pretty disciple niece. Su Ming had just woken up and could not process too much in his head at the moment. When he heard the words, disciple niece, he could not help but be stunned. Very pretty. She's a woman. His second senior brother smiled gently and nodded. What's her name? Su Ming remembered Tian Xiezi's status and an odd expression appeared on his face. Second senior brother scratched his head. After thinking about it deeply for a while, he eventually sighed and said, she's called, What's her name again? Youngest junior brother, I was just paying attention to the lass beside her and I already forgot her name. Su Ming looked at his seemingly absent-minded second senior brother, then a warmth that stemmed from within him spread through his entire body. He might have just woken up, but he could still remember clearly that when he entered that strange state and sat on the platform, his second senior brother had not been there. Yet right now, his second senior brother was sitting behind him. Su Ming could not imagine just how long he had been sitting. This was a silent show of care, a warmth that made Su Ming feel touched. He stood up and instinctively lifted his head to look at the top of the 9th summit. With just a glance, he could see that there was a person walking into the distance slowly. That figure was gradually hidden away by the ice mountain, causing Su Ming to be unable to see him any longer. However, while it may have been just one glance, but that aged back was familiar to Su Ming's eyes. "Thank you, second senior brother." Su Ming averted his gaze and looked at his second senior brother. He did not even know his name, but in his heart, the title of second senior brother was already deeply embedded within him. "We're brothers, there's no need for thanks between us. Besides, I didn't do anything, I only planted some flowers on your platform." Second senior brother smiled and stretched lazily. "I'm going to sleep. I haven't slept for the past few days. Youngest junior brother, remember to ask for me." As he spoke, second senior brother winked. There seemed to be a rare and slight hint of red on his cheeks, as if he was a little embarrassed of himself, reminding Su Ming of this so many times. "Oh, that's right, the method you used to clear your mind is the state of creating pictures. If that's the case, you'll need to immerse yourself in that realm for a long period of time. When you drew in the air just now, you used the power stored within your body. Gathering your power to draw is not good. That's called convergence through spreading out your power. You mustn't use it too often. You can't use it to calm your heart, so it's not suitable for you to train your mind. Look at my flowers. When did I ever use my power to make them grow? Do it naturally, only then can you clear your mind." Second senior brother let out a fake cough and advised him again, "How about this? Your third senior brother is familiar with the layout of Freezing Sky Clan. Have him bring you to the school's artifact storage hall. I remember there are some canvases that belong to Freezing Sky Clan stored there. It may lean slightly on the more expensive side, but you can go to Master and have him give you the Clan Master's plate, then you won't even have to spend a single coin." When a smile appeared on Su Ming's face, his second senior brother turned around and walked towards the mountain trail on the other side of the platform. He traveled with a natural grace, his hair flying behind his back from the wind, and he gradually disappeared from Su Ming's sight. As he watched his second senior brother leave, the warmth in Su Ming's heart spread through his entire body. He looked at the mountain rocks on the ninth summit, then at his surroundings. Slowly, a faint sense of home slowly appeared in his heart. Perhaps as time passed by, this feeling would grow stronger and deeper until he completely blended with the people here and would treat this place as his second home. Once Su Ming meditated for another day in his cave abode, he managed to stabilize the power of the middle stage of the awakening realm within him by noon, and he walked out once again. Su Ming did not quite understand the increase of his level of cultivation this time. He was confused, but he still knew that the main key for his increase in level was due to him training his mind. Training the mind, a state where you clear your mind to understand your own form of creation. Su Ming touched his face, right on the spot that was now hidden, but belonged to the additional blood moon that manifested beside the mountain mark. The blood moon was located in a rather strange position. It was placed within Su Ming's right eye itself. The blood moon in the right eye. Su Ming took a deep breath and his expression gradually became calm. He walked down the mountain trail, and before long, a cave abode appeared before him. Before he even got closer, he could already smell the fragrance of alcohol and hear snoring coming from within. Those snores rumbled like thunder. When he stood outside the cave abode, Su Ming paused for a moment. He was really only here to see just what was the living thing his second senior brother had talked about. It was a little difficult for him to understand, but now that he was here and was looking at his third senior brother's cave abode, Su Ming decided to bend his body down and walk through the door. The moment he entered, the snoring reached a deafening volume, reverberating through the cave. Hu Zi lay not too far away, a long line of drool hanging off the corner of his mouth. There was an intoxicated look on his face, as if he was doing something that made him happy in his dreams. Lying by his side was a person covered in plants. His right hand was captured by the unconscious Hu Zi. There were fewer plants covering his face, and Su Ming could see the pain on his face. That person also had his eyes closed, as if he was deep in his dreams and doing something that he did not like. His body would even occasionally convulse a few times. This was the first time Su Ming entered Hu Zi's cave abode. When he saw the person covered in plants, he was stunned, but did not think too much about it. He simply thought it was a unique feature in Hu Zi's practice. When he saw that his third senior brother was still deep in his sleep, Su Ming sat down cross-legged by his side. He did not bother Hu Zi, but chose to sit down and wait. Time trickled by, and after several hours, when the sky outside gradually darkened and dusk was about to arrive, Hu Zi's snores reached their loudest volume, and at that very instant, they were cut off abruptly. He opened his eyes and rubbed them, then wiped away the drool at the corner of his lips. Only then did he see Su Ming sitting not too far from him. "Ha ha, you're here," Hu Zi laughed foolishly and ruffled his own hair before grabbing a pot of wine by his side and taking a big mouthful again. "That was a good sleep. You brat, who gave you the right to disobey me?" Hu Zi put down his wine pot and looked at the person made of plants, slapping him. "Why are you still sleeping? Wake up." With that one slap, the person made of plants shuddered and opened his eyes. The first thing that entered his eyes was Hu Zi, who had suddenly put his head right before his face and was looking at him ferociously. Once he saw Hu Zi, the person visibly shuddered, and a look of anger and fear appeared on his face. "HMPH, so, how does it feel like sleeping with your grandpa Hu?" There was a prideful look on Hu Zi's face. He pulled his head back and slapped the person covered in plants with his right hand once again. When Hu Zi moved away, the person covered in plants immediately saw Su Ming sitting by the side, looking at him calmly. The moment he saw Su Ming, a conflicted look appeared in his eyes. The range of emotions within that conflicted look could be interpreted as resignation, regret, sentiment, and misery. "Third senior brother, who is this?" Su Ming looked at the person covered in plants calmly. When he saw the conflicted look in his eyes, he was surprised. Don't you know? Oh, that's right, you were trying to reach an epiphany. This person is called Ziche, and he's very powerful. When you were within yourself, he wanted to harm you, but he was unlucky. He shouldn't have crushed my gourd, much less stepped on second senior brother's plants. He was tied up by second senior brother in the end and he said he was giving him to us." Hu Zi let out a boisterous laugh and that prideful look on his face became even more prominent. He got up and gave a vicious slap to Ziche's head once again, and that slap caused a bang in the air. Ziche was already used to Hu Zi's slaps, yet when he was slapped right before Su Ming, the anger in his heart grew stronger. To him, if that terrifying hands of creation were not there, then Su Ming and Hu Zi would have to look up to him, but now. Oh, Su Ming's expression remained passive. "He must be the living thing second senior brother spoke about," he said unhurriedly. "Ah, so second senior brother told you about him." "That's right, he's the living thing, but youngest junior brother, don't you dare snatch him from me. I'm not done playing with him yet. Once I take him into my dreams a few more times, I'll toss him to you. You jerk, how dare you break my gourd." Hu Zi glared at Ziche and lifted his hand to slap him once again. "Third senior brother, wait. I want to ask him a few questions." Su Ming stood up, walked towards Ziche, and stood before him as he looked at the person completely covered in plants lying in front of him. Ziche glared at Su Ming coldly and disdain gradually appeared in his eyes. He might have been captured and humiliated by Hu Zi, but as a powerful berserker, he had his own pride. In his eyes, Su Ming was clearly the weakest among all, just as weak as an ant. Even if an elephant was captured, it would never cave against an ant. Su Ming crouched down and looked at Ziche as he stated calmly, "By right, I just came to Freezing Sky Clan, so there shouldn't be anyone paying attention to me. As for the reason why you came to the 9th summit to find me, it's because of Sima Xin, yes?" Ziche's gaze remained cold and disdainful, as if he did not hear Su Ming's words. Third senior brother, just how much of his power was sealed by second senior brother? Su Ming's expression remained passive as he asked softly. "It's completely sealed. Once we're done toying with him, we can just ask second senior brother to release some of his power. It'll be more fun this way." Hu Zi rubbed his hands and excitement appeared in his eyes, as if he had experienced this before. Once he heard Hu Zi's words, Ziche's expression clearly changed, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself to remain calm. However, from the occasional glances he threw towards Hu Zi, Su Ming could tell that he was afraid of him. However, he was clearly not afraid of Su Ming. "This is such a rare material, I can't waste it now." Su Ming looked at Ziche and smiled. That smile was very faint, so faint that it seemed like a light breeze, and it made him look completely harmless. Yet when the words fell into Ziche's ears, it made his heart tremble. For some unknown reason, the word, material, suddenly made Su Ming's faint smile seem much more vicious and terrifying than Hu Zi. Su Ming's smile made Ziche feel a chill traveling down his spine. This was a completely different feeling than the one he got when confronting Hu Zi. To him, while Hu Zi's actions might not be completely predictable, but they were still predictable enough for him to know what he would do. He might be afraid of him, but his fears were only towards the viciousness in his dreams. In truth, he still largely looked down on Hu Zi. Yet Su Ming gave him a completely different feeling. He could not grasp just what he intended to do, and as the word, material, continued echoing in his head, he became increasingly more horrified. Chapter 231, Freezing Sky Cave. Don't be afraid. Su Ming smiled faintly. His voice remained serene as he crouched down and put his right hand into his bosom and pulled out a few items unhurriedly. His actions not only attracted Ziche's attention and affected his mind, it also made Hu Zi incredibly curious. He quickly widened his eyes to watch. It was a beast bone and a few shrubs of herbs. When Hu Zi saw Su Ming taking these common items out, he was disappointed and started mumbling under his breath. He originally did not want to look at it, but when he saw Ziche's expression changing drastically when he saw the items, he was immediately surprised. What do you want to do? This was the first time Ziche spoke after he was captured. His voice was hoarse, but there was terror in his voice, and he was indeed terrified. This terror far surpassed the terror of facing Hu Zi. It was one that stemmed from his heart. Because when he saw the beast bone and the herbs, he suddenly understood what Su Ming meant by material. In his words, the beast bone was the material, the herbs were the ingredients, and Ziche himself was also treated as a material. This understanding and terror forced him to speak. You jerk, you can actually speak. Then why didn't you talk when your grandpa Hu asked you a question? Why didn't you speak even when you were in the dream? Before Su Ming could say anything, Hu Zi had already widened his eyes in anger. He took a step forward and slapped Ziche viciously again. How dare you lie to me? I hate people lying to me the most. Hu Zi slapped him a few more times in anger before he turned to look at the materials Su Ming brought out. Fourth, what are the bone and herbs for? Hu Zi scratched his head with a puzzled look. Third senior brother, you may not know this, but before I joined the 9th summit, I was creating medicine myself. His body is in good condition, he's perfect for me to create a certain medicine. Su Ming smiled softly and took up a shrub. He swept his gaze through Ziche's body, and as he spoke, he crushed the herbs and took out some of the seeds before stabbing through Ziche's chest with a finger. Just as blood flowed out of the wound, he pressed the seed into his flesh. Su Ming immediately followed by tapping on several other spots on Ziche's body in quick succession. Ziche did not feel too much pain, but his chest quickly grew numb, and when he lowered his head, he was shocked and terrified to see the seed on his chest growing at a bizarrely quick speed. Ziche's expression drastically changed when he saw the seed growing. This change of emotion was not at all weaker than when he was facing Su Ming's second senior brother's hands of creation. He could clearly feel the herbs absorbing his blood and life force to aid in their growth. The roots of the herbs were even spreading out slowly through his body. While he could ignore the pain of having something force its way through his flesh, but the terror of the unknown made his breathing quicken. A terror that was never seen in his eyes appeared as he looked at Su Ming. That terror reached its peak when Su Ming took some of the blood from Ziche's body and let it drop on the beast bone. Ziche quickly asked, "Just what do you want to do?" Su Ming lifted his head and cast Ziche a glance. With a faint smile, he said, "Make medicine." "What medicine?" Ziche trembled. Hu Zi was paying full attention to what was happening, but there was puzzlement on his face. However, when he saw Ziche's expression, he could not help but admire Su Ming a little. Fourth is good, just a few actions, and this man is already terrified. My intelligent self will have to learn this. Hu Zi nodded his head as if he was deep in thought. The procedure of making this medicine is easy. All I need is a living dead person. I'll plant some herbs in his body and use his blood and life force as nutrients for my herbs. Once the herbs fully mature, the living dead person will become an important material to create this medicine. Call it a medicine human, if you will. And then, I'll need some aura of death to create the pill. Once the medicinal pill is formed, the medicine human will also die. When the medicine human dies, the medicine will also be ready. Don't worry, I've already made it once, so I'm very familiar with the process. I'll make sure that you won't feel too much pain, Su Ming said, smiling, and due to his words, his voice was naturally laced with a strange quality. He brought out a few more herbs and planted them within Ziche's body. His actions were very gentle, as if he was afraid of damaging the herbs and the material before him. Yet when his actions fell into Ziche's eyes and his words, which sounded casual but held a determined quality to them, echoed in his ears, his face instantly turned pale. Terror or fear could no longer be used to describe how he looked at Su Ming. He was petrified. Even Hu Zi, who was crouching beside Su Ming, sucked in a sharp breath when he heard those words. A strange look came to his eyes as he looked at Su Ming. Eldest senior brother is a turtle and he's always in isolation. Second senior brother likes planting stuff, but he steals the plants at midnight himself. As for master, well, forget about him. I thought my new youngest junior brother would be the only other normal person besides me in this mountain. Who would have known that he has such a weird quirk? Treating a person as a material and turning him into medicinal liquid before drinking it down. Hu Zi shuddered and let out a long sigh. He had already finished thinking about how he would describe the fourth to his fifth junior brother if he should ever have one. Your second senior brother only took away 3 years of my freedom. He said he'll release me 3 years later. Ziche quickly said. It's fine. I can ask him to turn those 3 years to an eternity, Su Ming said and smiled. He did not lift his head but continued stabbing bloody holes into Ziche's body and planting medicinal herbs inside him. We're from the same school. You can't do this. My master won't let you off. Ziche looked at Su Ming, who was still smiling, and his terror reached its peak. To him, this face could practically become the most terrifying sight he had ever seen in the world. He suddenly understood why Sima Xin still asked him to take away the thing from Su Ming even though he was already on the way back. It's fine. I also have a master. Su Ming still did not lift his head. He brought out another herb with a serious expression, as if he was hesitating where he should place it on Ziche's body. In his terror, Ziche gritted his teeth and cursed in his mind. Damn it, Sima Xin didn't ask me to return my debt to him, he just pushed me into a fire. This Su Ming may not have great power, but the terror I feel from him can't be fake. This person is definitely abnormal. I can't use his power as a basis to judge him. It's Sima Xin. He was the one who asked me to come to you and take the bell away from you. He quickly said. Su Ming held the herbs in his right hand and slowly lifted his head. His expression remained passive, but in Ziche's eyes, that calmness was like the calm before a storm, a monstrous storm. Ziche even saw a hint of red in Su Ming's right hand. That red was murderous intent. While that murderous intent did not erupt forth from Su Ming's body, but as it appeared, the cave abode immediately turned cold. Ziche felt shaken, and he did not dare look at Su Ming's right eye. Hu Zi also took in a sharp breath by his side and shuddered. He could feel that his youngest junior brother completely changed from how he was previously in an instant. Where is Sima Xin? Su Ming asked unhurriedly. His voice sounded the same as usual, but when it landed in Ziche's ears, it sounded like thunder rumbling. There were even some lightning arcs traveling through his body, though they disappeared soon after. Ziche trembled and quickly explained, he's rushing back to the school. He'll be back in 2 days. I think I owed him a favor in the past, that's why when he sent me a letter to come, I couldn't refuse him. I didn't mean to offend you. He did not know why he was saying so much to explain himself, but he had a strong feeling that if he did not come clear, then even if he did not end up dead this time in the 9th summit, he would still be in great trouble in the future. This was what his instincts told him. This was an instinctual feeling that rose in him as he faced Su Ming. Su Ming was silent for a moment until the red light in his right hand flashed briefly and he asked calmly, what is Sima Xin's current level of cultivation? He has been away for many years. When he left, he had attained completion in the awakening realm. I haven't seen his current level of cultivation, so I'm not too certain, but if he reached the bone sacrifice realm, he'll definitely think of a way to enter Freezing Sky Cave and try to sense the will left behind by our ancestors there. Then he'll have a chance to change all the bones in his body at the initial stage of the Bone Sacrifice Realm and reach the great completion of the Bone Sacrifice Realm in one go. While the possibility of this happening is very low, and from what I know, there are only 3 people who had managed to do this, but if he can really find our ancestors' bones in Freezing Sky Cave, then he might be able to do it. He was originally known as the prodigy of Freezing Sky Clan to begin with, and was also rumored to be the person who was most likely to become the 4th god of Berserkers. He has a lot of friends within Freezing Sky Clan. Besides the 9th summit, the other 8 summits are practically filled with his friends. If he becomes your enemy, then you'd best be careful. Ziche's voice echoed within the cave abode and lingered around for a long time. What's Freezing Sky Cave? This was the first time Su Ming had heard of that name. I don't know the details, but I heard that Freezing Sky Clan's Great Frozen Plains is built on Freezing Sky Cave. If that's the case, then, in the deep parts of the endless icy water under our feet is Freezing Sky Cave. After all, the 9th summit is still part of Freezing Sky Clan, Ziche said. Once he was done speaking, he hesitated for a moment, then looked at the herbs on his body, gritted his teeth, and spoke again. This time, his voice dropped to a low whisper. If I were you, then I'd definitely settle all my grudges with him before he enters Freezing Sky Cave, or else, it won't matter whether he succeeds or fails, as long as he makes it out of Freezing Sky Cave, then he'll have a chance of entering Heaven Gate. Once he enters Heaven Gate, then his status will be completely different from us on the Great Frozen Plains. When that time comes, he will kill you, unless the 9th summit has the power to go up against Heaven Gate, then you'll definitely die. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he asked, Heaven Gate. Freezing Sky Clan is divided into 2 sections, the Great Frozen Plains and Heaven Gate. Only those in Heaven Gate are considered to be the core of Freezing Sky Clan. Besides inheriting the right to enter Heaven Gate, the only other way to enter Heaven Gate is to obtain 1000 shaman heads and not die when you enter Freezing Sky Cave. You can only enter once you fulfill those 2 conditions. Chapter 232, He Saw It. Huzi crouched by the side, watching Su Ming asking questions and Ziche answering them, and he had a dazed expression on his face. When he saw Ziche's change between how he had acted previously to how he acted now, he could not help but think of his previous actions. Youngest junior brother sure has a good trick up his sleeve. I'll definitely have to learn to do this. Huzi ran through Su Ming's every single word and action in his head, and once he believed that he had learned it, a prideful smile appeared on his face. Heaven Gate, Great Frozen Plains, that's utter nonsense. Youngest junior brother, if you don't like Sima Xin, then I'll teach him a lesson for you. If we can't win against him, then we can just run and go back to the 9th summit to look for second senior brother. Once he heard Huzi's words, warmth blossomed in Su Ming's heart. By the way, youngest junior brother, why did you come to me? If you didn't come for me, then I'll go out for a while. I haven't been out of the mountain for days. I'm worried that the people outside will miss their grandpa who. Huzi picked up his wine gourd and swung it a little. There was not much wine left in it. About that, third senior brother, you're familiar with Freezing Sky Clan. I'd like to go to the school's artifact storage hall and bring out some of the papers second senior brother spoke about for me to use on a regular basis when I practice clearing my mind. But before I go, I'd like to borrow Master's Clan Master's plate, Su Ming said, smiling. Clan Master's plate, you don't need to go and get it from Master, I have several of them with me here. As Huzi spoke, he ruffled through the things in his cave abode before bringing out a purple ice shaped in the form of a plate. Here, that's the one. Master has a lot of these. When I went there last time, I brought a few back. I'll give you one, take it and scare away other people when you feel like it. Huzi threw the plate in his hand to Su Ming while speaking. Su Ming was stunned. When he caught it, he immediately felt a freezing chill travel into his body and circulate around him once. By the looks of it, it was crafted with fine detail and did not seem fake. However, he was not the only one stunned. Ziche was also stunned. He sucked in a sharp breath, because he recognized what that plate was, and Huzi's words threw him into a state of disbelief. The 9th summit, so this is the 9th summit. Ziche's heart trembled. Let's go. I'm familiar with the artifact storage hall. I taught a lot of the people there a lesson before. Hu Zi patted his chest and was about to take Su Ming and leave, but once he took a few steps forward, he turned around and walked towards Ziche to glare at him. Hey, jerk, your grandpa who is about to leave. You're the living thing second senior brother gave us. Remember to follow behind us. Second senior brother might have sealed your power, but he said that you have to protect my youngest junior brother when he goes out, so you have to do it. Don't lie to me anymore, or else I'll teach you a lesson in my dreams. Ziche felt incredibly aggrieved and quickly said, but, my power has been sealed, I can't fly on my own. Shut up, your grandpa who will bring you out and throw you off in midair. If you don't know how to fly, then you'll fall to your death. Don't blame me for not saving you then. As Hu Zi spoke, he lifted Ziche and grinned at Su Ming before he bent his body down and went out of the cave abode before him. Su Ming followed behind. When he looked at the plant-covered Ziche being lifted with an expression filled with anger and indignation, he smiled and followed after. The three of them turned into long arcs and charged out of the 9th summit towards the center of the 9 summits, located far in the distance underneath Heaven Gate. There were many buildings there and it looked so grand that it exuded a vast and mighty air. The buildings seemed like they were cut from jades and gave off a magnificent aura. There were numerous people walking in and out of the buildings, and it gave the place a lively air. Hu Zi, who was leading the way in midair, let his right hand go loose the moment he flew out of the 9th summit's area. He tossed Ziche off and let out a huge shout, "Hey, I'm letting you fall now." Ziche's face paled as he plummeted downwards, but once he fell about 1,000 feet, surprised delight suddenly appeared on his face. His plummeting body came to an abrupt halt and he flew up into the air. Yet very soon, the joy on his face turned into anguish, because he realized he could only be in area not too far away from Su Ming and Hu Zi, or else his power would be sealed up once again. He did not even need to try it. He already knew that if he attacked Su Ming and Hu Zi, then his temporarily released power would immediately be sealed once again. HMPH, how dare you pretend before your grandpa Hu? Isn't it out now? What are you looking at? Hurry up and follow us. With a single glare from Hu Zi, Ziche fell silent and sighed, falling behind Su Ming. As Su Ming watched Hu Zi's actions and his words, his smile grew wider. Youngest junior brother, that is the 8th summit. The 8th summit is very interesting. There are quite a lot of them staying there, and they're usually very cautious. It's as if they're hiding something. But I'm the most intelligent grandpa who on the 9th summit. There's no secret in the world that can be kept hidden from my eyes. I even know the things second senior brother does. I can pass through the enchanted maze in the 8th summit even if I close my eyes. I saw a lot of interesting things. In the past, I saw a disciple nephew who is actually a girl disguising herself as a boy. I even saw her taking off her clothes. As Hu Zi spoke, his eyes started beaming with joy. That's the 7th summit. All the disciples there are weak. The enchanted maze may be weak, but the people there are far too careful, which is a pity. I was almost caught a few times in the past. There were even a few times where I was captured, but I was fast enough to escape. Still, it's a pity. Second senior brother refused to help and simply stood by the side as I got hit. This is the 2nd summit. It's also where Ziche is staying. HMPH, they can't keep their secrets away from Grandpa Hu's eyes either. In the past, Su Ming did not think much about Hu Zi's boasts. While he simply started to think that they sounded a bit odd the more he heard about it, Ziche was laughing bitterly by the side. There was one particular rumor among those in the 2nd summit that the disciples who ventured out at night would feel as if someone was watching them. They only learned much later that it was Hu Zi who was doing it. This person would always appear in the summits whenever he was free and hide in secluded spots, all the while snickering as he watched other disciples. Almost everyone knew about it in Freezing Sky Clan. The three of them flew through the air and after around the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, as Hu Zi kept on talking about his achievements in Freezing Sky Clan and all the secrets he learned through peeking at people, the three of them arrived at the center of the 9 summits, which was also located under Heaven Gate. Hu Zi took the lead and charged towards one of the many buildings on the ground with a huge leap. He flew down quickly, and there were quite a number of Freezing Sky Clan disciples venturing in and out of the buildings who would accidentally get in his way. Once they saw Huzi though, they would quickly move out of the way with odd expressions on their faces, as if they did not want to provoke this unreasonable person and end up having him sneak into their summit and peek on them. It was especially so for the female disciples. Once they saw Huzi, they would grit their teeth. Some of them even looked as if they were about to fly towards Huzi, but when they saw Ziche following behind him, they would move back hesitantly. Ziche's fame in Freezing Sky Clan was great due to him placing 9th in the Great Frozen Plains. When he saw what was happening, Ziche suddenly understood why Huzi insisted on bringing him here. Su Ming also understood, and laughed wryly as he cast a glance at Huzi, who was flying with a swagger and an incredibly smug expression. What are you berserker children looking at? If you continue watching, I'll sneak into your rooms tonight and watch you as much as I like. Hey, disciple nephew, how dare you not come and greet your grandpa who when you clearly saw me? Can't you see that even Ziche is flying behind me? Huzi continued shouting on the way, and his words made Ziche's expression darken continuously, while Su Ming did not know whether he should laugh or cry in this situation. When he saw that Huzi was about to act even more outrageously even though he had been flying around the buildings in the center of the 9 summits under Heaven Gate with a smug look, Ziche, who had been following behind Su Ming, found himself to be unable to bear with the pressure any longer and whispered to Su Ming. Su, Uncle Master who has gone past the artifact storage hall 8 times. As he spoke, he pointed towards a hall not too far into the distance. Su Ming let out a fake cough. Once he cast a glance at the artifact storage hall, he looked towards Huzi, who was shouting at some of Freezing Sky Clan's disciples before him. Then he smiled wryly and said, "Third senior brother, how about we go to the artifact storage hall first? If you still want to walk around, then I'll ask Ziche to accompany you later. I still have to go back and train in the mountain." The moment Huzi heard it, while there was a look on his face that said he had not fully enjoyed himself, he still turned around with a stern look. "Youngest junior brother, who said that I like loitering around? Bringing my youngest junior brother to the artifact storage hall is the most important thing to me. I just couldn't find the place. Let me see, the artifact storage hall is over there." Huzi pointed towards the artifact storage hall not too far away with a look of surprised delight. Huzi had arrived at the door to the artifact storage hall while he spoke. However, the door to the hall was closed. Su Ming remembered seeing the people inside immediately closing the door when they saw Huzi passing by. "Open up, your grandpa who is here. I'm not here to hit someone today. If you don't open the door right now, I'm going to get angry." Huzi went up to the door and lifted his foot to kick it. Very soon, the door flew open, revealing a man with a handsome face, but with a sullen expression. He was frowning, but there was a clearly resigned expression on his face. The man stood behind the door and looked at Huzi, then opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. You're here today, so that's why the door was closed. Youngest junior brother, she's the person I said was actually a woman disguising herself as a man. I saw." The man's expression instantly turned incredibly dark, and veins even started popping on his face. Su Ming quickly went up front to pull Huzi back, who was still shouting out in surprised delight, and smiled towards the man apologetically. "Disciple nephew, about that." Su Ming had yet to finish speaking when a focused look appeared on his face. He heard the sounds of an uproar nearby. Even the man standing before him lifted his head and looked towards the air behind Su Ming with a fanatical and respectful look. "The 7-colored light, eldest senior brother Sima has returned. There's no way we can be mistaken. That's eldest senior brother Sima's 7-colored mountain. Look, isn't that eldest senior brother Sima sitting on the mountain? There's a girl sitting beside him. That girl seems rather familiar. It's really big brother Sima." Uproars broke out everywhere around him. From the corner of his eye, Su Ming saw a 7-colored light piercing through the sky, traveling towards where they were. He slowly turned around and looked up. Chapter 233. What is your name? The entire sky was covered by a piercing 7-colored light. The 7 colors were like a rainbow, but the light was not as gentle as that of a rainbow. It spread all over the place instead, and every part of the world as far as Su Ming could see was filled with those colors. The seemingly blinding seven-colored light fell on all the summits and blended with the sky scattering on the ground. It filled everyone's vision with those colors. There was an indescribably domineering air to the light, causing all the disciples from the other 8 summits besides the 9th summit on the great frozen plains to lift their heads and look towards the center of the seven-colored light. Uproars broke out all over the place, because this seven-colored light could only come from one person in Freezing Sky Clan. In Freezing Sky Clan, only one person could make himself known in such a manner. That was the prodigy of Freezing Sky Clan, the one that was known to have the highest possibility of becoming the 4th god of berserkers, Sima Xin. It's senior brother Sima, he's back. I heard that senior brother Sima has been away for many years. When he left, his power had already reached the peak of the awakening realm. Now that he is back, could it be that he's now in the bone sacrifice realm? When senior brother Sima left the school, he said he won't return unless he reached the bone sacrifice realm. The uproars shook the world. The appearance of the seven-colored light shocked all of the disciples of the 8 summits on the great frozen plains. Some of those who were close to Sima Xin even turned into long arcs and flew out from their summits. In the blink of an eye, numerous people flew into the sky and floated in midair to watch from the distance. The crowd beside Su Ming who were gathered in the center of the 9 summits underneath Heaven Gate and were walking in and out of the buildings just now also flew up into the air with fanatical and respectful looks on their faces. When they looked at the sky, they wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed towards the person in the light. Even the man who Zi said was really a woman disguising herself as a man also walked out briskly to bow towards the sky. Welcome back, eldest senior brother Sima. These words were repeated by the numerous people on the ground, and seemed to have fused together to become one voice that shook the world. Su Ming stood there and felt his eyes hurting slightly due to the seven-colored light that seemed to want to pierce through him. He watched the people welcoming Sima Xin back respectfully while he, Zi, and Ziche, who was standing by his side, all seemed to have been forgotten by the world. In their eyes, the only thing they could see at that moment was the seven-colored light. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with this feeling. This sight reminded him of that time when he arrived on the field before Windstream Mountain when he was still in Dark Mountain. At that time, he also stood in a corner and was a nobody as he looked at the prodigies walking forth and being the center of everyone's attention. Yet Su Ming was no longer how he used to be. In the past, he had to force himself to remain calm, but now, he did not need to do it on purpose. He could just stand there and remain calm. His eyes were calm, his expression was calm, his body was calm, and his heart, too, was calm. He looked at the source of the seven-colored light located far away in the sky. Over there was a mountain floating in midair, a seven-colored mountain. There was a man standing there with his face purposefully muddled. The color of the man's clothes could not be seen clearly through the seven-colored light. Su Ming could only see his hair floating in the air and a girl standing by his side. However, that girl's face could not be seen clearly. As the seven-colored mountain got closer, more shouts echoed on the ground. The sounds of worship sounded like waves rising and falling in Su Ming's ears. He looked at the people from all the summits floating in the sky and saw that they were all currently wrapping their fists in their palms to bow towards the approaching seven-colored mountain. Thank you for your warm welcome. I've prepared some gifts for all of you. Once I return to my mountain, I'll ask my good friends from each of the other summits to take them and distribute to all of you. Sima Xin's gentle voice echoed in the air and there was a kind smile on his face as he wrapped his fist in his palm to return the greeting to the crowd. There was a relaxed look on his face and a certain charm that could not be described around him, causing the others to feel as if spring wind was blowing against their bodies. They would naturally feel a sort of friendliness towards him. How fake. Grandpa who met this Sima Xin a few times in the past. His smiles are too fake. Second senior brother's smiles are much more soothing than his. Master wanted to take him in as his disciple in the past, thank goodness he didn't take him in the end. Zi stood beside Su Ming and picked his nose as he spoke in a condescending manner. Ziche was silent, but when he looked towards the seven-colored mountain in the distance, his eyes were dark. He now resented Sima Xin. If he had not asked him to go to the 9th summit to cause trouble for Su Ming, he would not be in this sorry state now. Su Ming was silent. He was still looking at the gradually approaching seven-colored mountain in the sky. Soon, he saw Sima Shin's face clearly. Sima Shin, who was dressed in white, had an incredibly handsome face and looked very gentle and elegant, as if there was not a hint of anger within him. His brows were sharp and his eyes sparkled. The smile on his face simply did not disappear. A temperament that was clearly different from others was natural to Sima Shin, and once it blended together with his extraordinary looks, it turned into an indescribable charm. This was not the first time Su Ming crossed paths with Sima Shin, yet strictly speaking, this was the first time he truly saw him. This was different from when Sima Shin had borrowed Fang Emu's body to attack him when he was in Han Mountain City. Su Ming looked at Sima Shin. He watched his graceful demeanor and his gentle smile, but still remained calm and did not speak. Hu Zi's disdain, Su Ming's calmness, and Zichai's sullenness were completely different from the respectful expressions on the other Freezing Sky clan disciples around them. Because of their different expressions and because they stood together, when other people swept their gazes over the crowd, they would not be able to help themselves but pay some attention towards them. Sima Shin might also have noticed Su Ming, but he remained smiling and did not reveal any sort of changes in expression. "Let's go, third senior brother. Once we get the papers, let's go back to the mountain," Su Ming said calmly. The enmity between him and Sima Shin could be described as something simple, but could also be described as something complex. Nonetheless, there was only one conclusion to it: they had reached a point where their enmity could not be solved. Unless he returned Han Mountain Bell respectfully, ignored his promise with Han Kangzi, and asked for Sima Shin's forgiveness for what happened to Fang Mu, there was simply no other way to resolve this. However, Su Ming simply could not do these things. After his words, Su Ming was just about to turn around and walk into the artifact storage hall to get his papers when the seven-colored mountain closed in. As the seven-colored light gradually dissipated, Su Ming not only saw Sima Shin's face clearly out of the corner of his eye, but he also saw an excited petite face smiling beautifully behind him. It was a beautiful girl. She wore a purple robe and seemed quite young. Her skin was like jade and her eyes like the moon. She stood behind Sima Shin with an obedient demeanor, yet the liveliness in her eyes would make others feel shocked by her charm while also sensing the wild beauty within her once they saw her. That sort of beauty came naturally and was not formed as time passed by, neither was it an act. It was due to the environment she grew up in, her personality, and other factors that formed this rarely seen wild beauty within her. Her sparkling eyes, curving brows, the arc of her lips that could captivate others with a smile were the true epitome of a beautiful smile. Although she might still be young and was yet to fully mature, this girl still made Su Ming shudder when he caught sight of her from the corner of his eye as he was just about to turn around. At that instant, he felt as if hundreds upon thousands of thunders rumbled in his mind and exploded simultaneously, causing his body to tremble and shudder. His breathing also quickened in a manner that had never been seen on him, as if his breathing could no longer keep up with the rumbles in his heart, neither could it keep up with how hard his heart pounded. The world had come to a standstill at that moment before Su Ming's eyes. The wind did not move, the clouds remained still, all the uproars he heard instantly disappeared. In that moment, in the world he saw, the people disappeared, the 9 summits too disappeared. The 7 colors in the sky had completely disappeared in his eyes. There was no longer any 7-colored mountain, neither was Sima Shin there any longer. In his sight and the world he saw, there was only one thing, and there could only be one thing: the person dressed in purple. The person with the wild and untamed smile. The person whose eyes sparkled and seemed to contain endless vigor within them. That girl filled with wild and untamed beauty. The calmness in Su Ming's eyes shattered. The calmness on his face crumbled. The calmness in his body was replaced by shivers. The calmness in his heart was gone. At that moment, he forgot that he was standing in Freezing Sky Clan, forgot everything that he'd seen. It was the girl standing behind Sima Shin that made him forget everything. At that moment, his mind was blank. He had no thoughts, his mind did not process anything. The only thing in his head was a morning song filled with sadness that played in his heart without a sound. That morning song was accompanied by a scene that made his heart clench in pain. White snow floated down in that image in his head. In the snow, a boy and a girl held hands and walked through the storm. Snow fell on their hair, as if they had walked together until their hair had turned white with age. Su Ming, that's a promise. I'll definitely come. Everything that had happened in that scene made Su Ming tremble. He stared at the girl who was gradually approaching them in the sky and looked at everything before him. Bai Ling. How could this be? He mumbled. There was disbelief in his eyes. At that moment, a strong urge suddenly erupted within him. He did not want to suppress that urge, neither would he suppress it, because he could not suppress it. Even if that urge would make his training to clear his mind come to a standstill, he just didn't want to suppress it. He lifted his right foot slowly in that instant, and at the very moment his foot landed on the air, he rose and started walking towards the seven-colored mountain. Su Ming's actions temporarily stunned Hu Zi. Yet even though he was surprised, he still immediately followed behind him. Ziche hesitated for a moment before he too followed after. As the seven-colored light grew dimmer in the sky, Su Ming stood before the floating seven-colored mountain. He blocked the mountain from moving forward. That sight immediately caught the attention of all those present. They all turned their gazes towards the place, and in an instant, a few thousand pairs of eyes were gathered on Su Ming, who was to them an unfamiliar face. What's your name? Su Ming did not see the seven-colored mountain, did not see Sima Xin, did not see anyone else. He could only see the girl, or more accurately speaking, the person standing in the snow in Dark Mountain. Chapter 234, Not Bai Ling. Sima Xin's return attracted a lot of people's attention. Among them were two people who Su Ming did not notice. One of them was the fourth summit's Han Feizi. She was wearing a white robe and stood on the mountain with a demeanor as cold as ice. Her expression was calm when she looked at the seven-colored mountain in the sky, though no one knew what she was thinking about. Yet the occasional frosty glint in her eyes showed that she harbored a certain degree of animosity towards Sima Xin. That animosity was perhaps different from Han Kangzi's. It was a scrutinizing look towards a rival. The other person whom Su Ming did not take note of was the third summit's Han Kangzi. She stood on the third summit with the beautiful, oval-shaped-faced woman by her side. They saw Sima Xin, heard the people's cheers, and saw the light from the seven-colored mountain falling on their bodies. The moment she saw Sima Xin returning, Han Kangzi's face turned pale. The woman beside her frowned and let out a cold harumph before she took a few steps towards Han Kangzi. He's not even placed first in the ranking board for the Great Frozen Plains yet. He's only second place, and he's already showing off so much. Han Kangzi was silent. She lowered her head and did not say a word. HMPH, the rumor about him being the one person who was most likely to become the fourth god of berserkers is simply the doings of the school. The school created his image and his chances. To many disciples, that Sima Xin has already been turned into a god of berserker along with our eldest senior sister Tian Lanmeng and senior brother Chen Qing. The three people known as the three great prodigies of Freezing Sky Clan. Let's see, who would be the first of the three who can enter Heaven Gate. Still, while Sima Xin's potential is pretty good, some of the things he does seriously disgust me. Even if eldest senior sister Tian Lanmeng and Chen Qing return to the sect, they wouldn't cause such a stir. Besides the school creating that image of his that makes the others so crazy about him, isn't it also because he keeps using all those tricks? He keeps using a large amount of things to attract other people to follow him, and from there, he makes acquaintances with them. The woman beside Han Kangzi spoke with a cold smile on her face, then cast Han Kangzi a look. There was pity on her face. Why do you always look this way whenever you see him? Why are you afraid of him? He simply planted the berserker seed of love within you, that's all. If you're scared of him and keep hoping that someone will help you, then even if someone actually manages to free you, you'll be controlled by someone else in the end. Are women any less than men? Look at eldest senior sister Tian Lanmeng. She's our best example. Even when that Sima Xin sees our eldest senior sister, would he dare harm her? There was an aloof pride on her oval-shaped face. When we were coming back, I saw the portion of the sky mist barrier where Uncle Master Bai was guarding. Han Kangzi bit her lip and slowly lifted her head, and resolution appeared on her face. Uncle Master Bai, you mean the person who was also rumored to have had the hopes of the entire school placed on him in the past? The person who also practiced the creation arts of the god of berserkers, but eventually ended up practically estranged from the school simply because he did not follow the will of the school to practice the god of berserkers transformation but instead inherited his master's right to become the divine general of the bone sacrifice realm. That uncle Master Bai. Han Kang-zi nodded. Once the oval-shaped faced woman heard it, she sighed softly. Divine generals are all revered people, and it's something a lot of people dream of attaining. Even in the school, the desire to become divine general is second only to becoming the god of berserkers, but, once you become a divine general, it's practically impossible to become the god of berserkers. They can only become the subordinates for the future god of berserkers. There aren't many divine generals within the school. Most of them have already been sent out to gain experience in killing so that they could be a force for the future god of berserkers. I heard that the person you like is also a divine general. She asked suddenly. A red blush immediately appeared on Han Kang-zi's face, as if she forgot the stress brought by Sima Xin at that moment and was embarrassed like a little girl. Just as she was about to speak, her senior sister's expression suddenly changed. That person you like, what is he doing? Han Kang-zi was stunned. Instantly, she turned her head back to look, and her expression changed. The entire area was filled with silence at that moment. Including Han Kang-zi, all the people's gazes were focused on the person walking slowly towards the seven-colored mountain in the sky. At that moment, even Han Feizi's cold and aloof face changed. There was confusion as she looked at Su Ming. Hu Zi was also stunned. He rubbed his eyes and looked at Su Ming, who was walking from his side with a dumb expression towards the seven-colored mountain. Hu Zi did not hesitate, and with a single move, he charged towards Su Ming. He would not bother thinking about Sima or whoever else, nor would he be bothered by the crowd's gazes. The only thing in his mind was that he was the one who brought his youngest junior brother here. He could not let anything happen to him. Ziche felt his heart lurch and his mouth go dry. He never expected Su Ming to walk out just like this and face Sima Xin. "What's your name?" Su Ming's body floated in midair. As he stood before the approaching seven-colored mountain, he could only see the girl filled with untamed beauty. His voice echoed in the air gently, and as it fell into the people's ears, all those who heard immediately had odd expressions on their faces. Who is he? That person is unfamiliar, but the ninth summit's Sun Dahu is beside him. If Sun Dahu is with him, and especially since he blocked senior brother Sima's path, then he must definitely be an unreasonable person as well. I heard that the ninth summit has received a new disciple. Could it be him? But all the people on the ninth summit are strange people. His actions and words at least follow the traits that belong to those in the ninth summit. Interesting. This person must be attracted to junior sister Bai's face, and blinded by his infatuation, he forgot his status and asked for her name. He's biting off more than he can chew. How could he be so rude to junior sister Bai? HMPH. Low mocking and disdainful voices gradually appeared as the people looked on with odd expressions on their faces. To them, Su Ming was simply a person who was too confident in himself. Being rude to a beautiful woman right in front of senior brother Sima was exactly what an unreasonable person would do. Han Kang-zi was stunned. Her gaze immediately shifted from Su Ming to the girl behind Sima Xin, and gradually, a conflicted look appeared in her eyes. He once said that he broke a promise. Han Kang-zi sighed softly. The woman beside her was frowning, and there was a displeased look in her eyes as she looked at Su Ming. At the same time, Han Feizi also cast a profound look towards the girl behind Sima Xin on the fourth summit, and she sank into deep thought. Su Ming slowly came to a halt 30 feet away from the seven-colored mountain. Sima Xin looked down on Su Ming, who was blocking his path, from his position on the mountain. In truth, when he was coming forth from the distance, he had already seen Su Ming, but he did not dare act rashly because Ziche was by Su Ming's side. Judging by his looks, it seemed that he was a little sullen and resigned. Yet he did not expect that while he was ignoring the man, Su Ming would come to block his path over here. It would have been fine if he was merely blocking his path, but Su Ming was not even looking at him, but at the girl behind him. This sort of disregard, coupled with the grudges that couldn't be solved between them, made Sima Xin's eyes turn dark and chilly. "Junior brother, you seem rather unfamiliar. Why are you blocking my path?" Sima Shin smiled faintly and the cold look in his eyes disappeared. His voice was calm, as if he was not angry with Su Ming's actions and he had a big heart. Su Ming did not speak. Up till this point, he still had not even looked at Sima Shin. He simply kept his gaze fixed on the girl filled with wild beauty. The girl blushed under Su Ming's stare, but she was frowning and there was displeasure in her eyes. She cast a glance at Su Ming, then at Sima Shin, who was standing before her, and did not speak. The person before him was less than 30 feet away from him, but the person in Su Ming's heart was so far away it was as if there was the distance of heaven and earth between them. At that moment, Su Ming smiled. That smile was very faint, and there was a sadness to it. If we continue walking in the snow, will we walk until our hair turns white? Those words echoed in his head and eventually turned into a sigh. Su Ming knew. The girl before him was not Bai Ling. This had nothing to do with the berserker seed of love. The girl's eyes were the same as Bai Ling's. In physical terms, they looked so similar that there were practically no differences between them, but since their souls were different, then they were completely different people. Their aura was also different. Aura was something Su Ming could sense ever since he started practicing aura refinement and started observing people's aura around him once he activated the branding art in his mind. This person was not her. She may have the same face, but she was not Bai Ling. Su Ming closed his eyes. He did not ask her again, because he had already obtained his answer. That urge within gradually died down. When he opened his eyes once again, they had already returned to a calm state. No longer looking at the girl, Su Ming turned around and started walking away to leave. He heard the mockery and disdain in the low voices around him and felt the ridiculing gazes on his person, but these did not bother him. Yet while he may not care about it, it did not mean that Hu Zi did not mind it. Hu Zi narrowed his eyes and cast an angry glare around the place from beside Su Ming, even growling with a hostile look on his face. "What are you looking at? What, do you dare say all this right in front of Sima Shin's face? Laugh, you jerks, I'm telling you to laugh. Just you wait, I'll sneak into your places tonight and let you know my might." Hu Zi was about to continue speaking, but his words were cut off bluntly by Sima Shin. Sima Shin smiled as if he was pleased with what the girl behind him did and cast a look at Su Ming, saying slowly, "Junior brother, are you going to leave just like that? Take care of your senior brothers first, or else I'll teach you what respect is in place of your master." Su Ming paused in his footsteps and turned around, then looked at Sima Shin for the first time in midair. When their gazes met, they seemed to have viciously clashed with each other. "I am not your junior brother, disciple nephew Sima, I am your uncle master." Chapter 235, The First Battle in Freezing Sky. Su Ming's voice was calm when he spoke languidly, looking at Sima Shin. There was no pride in his voice, neither did he have the condescending manner Sima Shin adopted while he stood on the seven-colored mountain, but the meaning behind his words was a form of condescension under the rules of Freezing Sky Clan itself. "I am your uncle master." This sentence instantly made the people around him fall silent. There may be anger on their faces, but they did not dare refute his words. They could only accept the high status of the ninth summit with resignation. A piercing, chilling light instantly appeared in Sima Shin's eyes. As he looked at Su Ming, his lips gradually curled up in a cold smile. Hu Zi immediately brightened up and placed his hands on his hips as he lifted his head and shouted pridefully towards Sima Shin, "Oh, that's right. Hey, jerk, your grandpa who is your uncle master. Come here, Sima Shin, greet your uncle master." Sima Shin simply ignored Hu Zi's existence. At that moment, only Su Ming existed in his eyes. With such close proximity and with the slight connection he had with Han Mountain Bell in the past, he could tell with certainty that Han Mountain Bell was within Su Ming. "Uncle Master, Then allow me to consult you and see whether you have the right to be my uncle master." As Sima Shin spoke, he took a step forward with his right foot and lifted his finger to point at the sky. Freeze. With his voice, a large amount of green, freezing air suddenly manifested on the originally cold sky. That freezing air seemed to have a physical form, and the air would freeze as it passed by it. Rumbling sounds echoed in the air. An illusionary hand formed from the green mist appeared in the freezing air and manifested abruptly in the sky. That hand gave off a freezing presence and gathered together out of nowhere before it charged towards Su Ming to catch him. The creation art. As expected of senior brother Sima, he's indeed the person who will become the god of berserkers. His first move itself is the creation art. No ordinary person could cast the creation art so easily, even if it was just the one creation art. Besides leader Lu on the 9th summit, the other people there are all trash. I heard that their eldest senior brother isolates himself all the time, the second is always planting flowers like a weak woman, the third is an unreasonable fellow, and that newest addition to the 9th summit just had the galls to block senior brother Sima's path. The green hand charged towards Su Ming, and a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Yet at that moment, anger appeared on Hu Zi's face and he let out a low growl. Youngest junior brother, move back. Jerk, how dare you attack my youngest junior brother in my face? Hu Zi lifted his head and sat down in midair. He lifted his right hand swiftly and overlapped his index and middle fingers together. As he lifted his hand, he drew an arc in the sky. A mighty presence erupted forth from Hu Zi's body. The strength of that presence seemed to have caused the weather and earth to change, causing the incoming green hand to falter for a moment in midair. Entering, dream, Hu Zi's expression was stern. At that moment, not a hint of recklessness could be seen on his face. His act of drawing an arc with his two fingers seemed to have contained some mysterious form of creation, and when Sima Xin saw this, his expression turned grave. The people around him also became nervous. As they looked at Hu Zi, expressions of surprise appeared on their faces, as if during that instant, the Sundahu before them became completely different from the person in their memories. Right at the instant the green hand froze in midair for a moment, Hu Zi's right index finger touched the center of his brows. His eyes immediately fell shut and he started snoring. Nothing changed, except for the appearance of Hu Zi's snores in the air, and since he was in deep sleep, he could not continue floating in the air and fell from the sky. All the people who saw this were stunned and burst out laughing a moment later. Even Sima Xin started chuckling after the stun wore off. Yet a chilling glint appeared in his eyes and he pointed towards the falling Hu Zi with his right hand. Immediately, the freezing green hand charged towards Hu Zi, whistling through the air, a clear sign that while Sima Xin had laughed at Hu Zi's actions, he was also displeased, and for that, he wanted to hurt him. Su Ming was silent. He did not laugh. It was clear that Hu Zi chose to act that way just now because he already considered Su Ming as his youngest junior brother under the same master, and as his senior brother, it was his duty to protect him. Hu Zi's power may not be great, but it was precisely because of this that his actions reflected what he thought even more prominently when he stood before Su Ming. That alone was enough. Right at the moment Hu Zi started plummeting downwards, Su Ming turned into a long arc and charged towards him, catching his body in midair and landing on the ground. But the green hand was still chasing after them. Su Ming did not bother with that hand. Right at the moment he landed on the ground, Ziche flew up and charged towards the hand. He had to act, or else he had no idea what sort of horrible fate would befall him when he went back to the 9th summit. Besides, he was also angry towards Sima Xin. Rumbling sounds echoed above Su Ming, but he did not lift his head up to look. Once he landed on the ground, he gently placed the snoring and drooling Hu Zi on the ground. He looked at Hu Zi's face. That silly look on his face made Su Ming smile. Amidst the rumbling sounds in the air was Sima Xin's downcast voice. Ziche, what's the meaning of this? Sima Xin, there's no use talking. If you attack Su Ming, then I have to act against you. Ziche's appearance made all the people watching immediately burst out into an uproar again. That's senior brother Ziche, ranked 9th on the Great Frozen Plains ranking board. Isn't he good friends with senior brother Sima? Why is he suddenly helping an outsider? I saw him with the people from the 9th summit just now. The oval-shaped faced woman beside Han Kangzi let out a cold harumph as the discussions raged around her, but it was clear that she had let out a sigh of relief when she saw Ziche just now. Sima Xin stared at Ziche. As their gazes met in midair, his eyes gradually turned cold. At that moment, as Su Ming looked at Hu Zi snoring as he slept on the ground, he slowly lifted his head and looked at Sima Xin standing beside the seven-colored mountain in the sky. Ziche, stand back. Take care of my third senior brother, Su Ming said unhurriedly, then lifted his right foot to take a step into the sky. The moment his foot landed, his body left the ground and he stood in midair. Ziche hesitated for a moment before he wrapped his fist in his palm to salute Su Ming, then returned to Hu Zi's side. My power is not as great as yours, and I didn't want to fight you, Su Ming said calmly, looking at Sima Xin. You have your own thing to do, as do I, but you shouldn't have tried to hurt my third senior brother once he lost all power to fight back. Su Ming's voice still remained calm. He is my third senior brother. If you want to fight, then, I will fight. At that moment, a chilling glint appeared within the calmness in Su Ming's eyes. At that very moment, an incredibly powerful killing intent surged out from Su Ming's body. That murderous intent came from his right eye, from the picture of the blood moon and dark mountain. The instant Su Ming declared his intention to fight, his entire demeanor changed. While he may still look calm, there was a pressure coming from within that calmness that made people feel as if it was pressing heavily on their bodies from above. He lifted his right foot and took his first step towards Sima Xin. At the moment it landed, a clear mountain mark appeared on Su Ming's face. It was the mark of the mountain with 5 summits, Dark Mountain. When that mark appeared, an illusion immediately formed in the sky above Sima Xin. In the blink of an eye, the gigantic dark mountain that was exactly like the dark mountain mark on Su Ming's face appeared in the sky. The moment it appeared, an incredibly powerful pressure spread out and caused the people who were watching on the sides to withdraw with changed expressions. Sima Xin gave a cold sneer and lifted his right hand and clenched his fist around empty air. The moment he did so, a large amount of cold air gathered together underneath Dark Mountain and turned into a gigantic ice fist that charged towards it. Rumbling sounds reverberated through the air and the ice fist crashed into Dark Mountain, triggering a vicious wave of force that turned into a large wave of ripples that spread through the air. Once that punch was thrown, an ice layer instantly appeared on the spot where the ice fist touched the 5-peaked Dark Mountain formed from Su Ming's mountain mark amidst the rumbling sounds. The ice layer spread out rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, ice covered the entire mountain, turning it into a 5-peaked ice mountain. The ice mountain floated in the sky. It was originally just an illusion, but at that moment, due to the ice fist created by Sima Xin's creation art, the mountain was caught between a state of having physical form and being an illusion. A simple trick. You are, as weak as you were when I met you in Han Mountain. I don't even need to use the power of my berserker mark, neither do I need to use my origin vessel, the 7-colored mountain. Sima Xin said languidly. There was no disdain in his voice. He was merely speaking in a tone that suggested he was looking down on Su Ming because they were not of the same level and he was more powerful. As he spoke, Sima Xin placed his hands behind his back and looked at Su Ming coldly. I'll give you a chance to attack. If you disappoint me, then I'll make you despair. Bring out Han Mountain Bell. Let me see how powerful it is in your hands, Sima Xin said coldly. Su Ming did not speak. He had first-hand experience of Sima Xin's arrogance, and this was not the first time he heard such words from his mouth. His expression turned even more aloof in his silence. Underneath his robes was the other part of the berserker mark Sima Xin could not see, and it was now manifesting on his body. As it did so, Su Ming lifted his right hand and waved it in the sky. A large area underneath the frozen dark mountain started distorting. The distortion spread out, and in an instant, an illusionary dark mountain tribe appeared in the world. The plants, the trees, the houses, all of these things were shown in such fine detail that they looked real. They covered the entire sky, and those who saw it felt as if their entire beings were about to be sucked into the tribe. A grave expression appeared on Sima Xin's face. This is your complete berserker mark. A depressing feeling that pressed heavily on the hearts of all those looking surrounded the entire area when Dark Mountain Tribe appeared. The manifestation of this berserker mark made Sima Xin feel a force pressing heavily against him. This was the most complex berserker mark he had ever seen in his life. There was even a vague and indistinct grief coming from within the illusionary tribe formed from the berserker mark that affected his heart. What is with this berserker mark? Why are there emotions in there? Sima Xin's expression changed drastically. Chapter 236. Battle of Berserker Marks. Sima Xin was shaken. Su Ming's berserker mark gave off a huge, threatening presence. This threat far surpassed how he felt when he first saw Su Ming in Han Mountain. However, it was merely a threatening feeling. Besides the grave expression on Sima Shin's face, a pattern was appearing faintly on his skin. That pattern looked like a flower, and it was blooming in a manner that outshone all other flowers. Yet if anyone took a closer look, then they would clearly see that the blooming flower was actually an ice flower. There was a faint layer of frost around it, causing Sima Shin's face to look as if he was covered in a layer of frost. "You're one of the few people who can force me to use my berserker mark. Today, I'll let you see the power of my berserker mark," Sima Shin slowly said, and as his voice fell into the people's ears, the words turned into a layer of frost that covered their bodies. The moment he finished speaking, ice and snow gathered around Sima Shin and turned into a gigantic ice flower. The sunlight reflecting off the ice flower shone with a seven-colored light, causing Sima Shin to be surrounded by it, and it crashed into the dark mountain tribe that was formed from Su Ming's berserker mark. There were no banging sounds, only mere rumbles. When Sima Shin's berserker mark appeared, its presence also manifested along with it. Soon, under the rumbling sounds, the illusionary dark mountain tribe Su Ming had created in the sky was instantly covered in a layer of frost, just like how Dark Mountain was previously. In the blink of an eye, all the houses, plants, and trees in Dark Mountain tribe turned into ice sculptures. Even if you activated your entire berserker mark, you are still too weak. As Sima Shin spoke, the gigantic ice flower behind him gradually rose into the air, glowing with the seven-colored light. The gigantic flower was the center of the seven-colored light, as if it wanted to fight for the glory of the position of being the only source of light in the sky with the sun. It charged towards Su Ming. The petals opened up like a big mouth, as if they wanted to swallow up Su Ming whole. The entire process of the fight between Su Ming and Sima Shin may have seemed to have happened slowly, but in truth, all these happened in a few short moments. The two of them may be hundreds of feet apart, but this sort of battle between berserker marks was incredibly dangerous. If one party was slightly weaker, that person would instantly be gravely injured. This sort of battle between berserker marks was an origin divine ability that only the berserkers of the berserker tribe could cast after they reached the awakening realm. Su Ming's expression did not change even the slightest, even though the ice flower formed from Sima Shin's berserker mark was quickly charging towards him. He stood in his spot calmly, and he looked not towards Sima Shin, but towards the frozen Dark Mountain and his equally frozen tribe. "My berserker mark is not yet complete," he said unhurriedly. This was the first time he spoke ever since he started battling Sima Shin. As he spoke, a shocking wave of murderous intent erupted forth from his body. In an instant, his right eye was stained with a bloody shade of red. That bloody red look was clearly the blood moon. At the same time, the illusionary Dark Mountain and tribe in the sky welcomed a new addition, a blood moon. There was an enchanting air to the blood moon. The moment it appeared, the sad presence that shrouded Dark Mountain and Dark Mountain tribe changed abruptly. There was no longer any grief coming from within, but a shocking amount of killing intent. It fell upon the entire layer of ice on Dark Mountain and colored the place a bloody shade of red. The ice on the houses in the tribe was also illuminated by a bloody red glow. It was as if the entire world had just been dyed in a blood-red color. The picture of the blood moon and Dark Mountain. Booming sounds spread in all directions like thunder. The ice layer on Dark Mountain completely shattered and exploded into pieces with a bang. The ice on the houses in the tribe also cracked and turned into ice shards that tumbled backwards. Even the gigantic ice flower charging towards Su Ming turned into a blood-red flower under the illumination of the blood moon. Before it even got close to Su Ming, it was torn to pieces and exploded. "This is my complete berserker mark." Su Ming took a step forward and lifted his right hand, then slammed it downward before him. The moment he did so, Dark Mountain rumbled and charged towards Sima Shin. Whispering could also be heard coming from the houses in the tribe, causing Sima Shin's expression to change. He instantly retreated. Yet before he could move too far back, he found himself unable to leave the area of the blood-red light. The entire picture of the blood moon and Dark Mountain seemed to have come to life and turned into a gigantic sealing rune. Sima Shin was within the rune, and he could not seem to escape. Not only did the expression on his face drastically change to shock, his pupils also shrank. Su Ming's berserker mark had once again surpassed his expectations. This was completely different from the Su Ming in his memories. He suddenly understood why Ziche would fail. He could sense that at this moment, Su Ming had the power to fight against those in the later stage of the awakening realm with just his berserker mark alone. He still has that origin lightning of his, he also has Han Mountain Bell and that sharp sword. As Sima Xin retreated, he bit his tongue and coughed out a mouthful of blood. That blood immediately turned into blood mist before him. Your berserker mark may be complicated, but my berserker mark isn't easy either. As Sima Xin spoke, the blood mist before him immediately charged towards him and stained his face, then with a bizarre speed, seeped into his skin. It was quickly followed by Sima Xin lifting his head to growl at the sky. The berserker mark of the ice flower appeared once again on his face and body. However, this time, there was not just one ice flower, but 2, 3, 4, until 8 flowers appeared on his body. The 8 ice flowers covered his entire body. However, the sizes of these 8 flowers were clearly slightly smaller than of the first. Yet when the 8 ice flowers appeared, it made Sima Xin's retreating body instantly stop. He no longer retreated but lifted his arms and swung them sideward. With that one swing, the 8 ice flowers formed and spun around him to turn into an ice typhoon. Freezing Sky Berserker Art, 10 Creations. Sima Xin stated in a low, booming voice and clapped his hands together to point in Su Ming's direction. The ice typhoon around him instantly grew bigger, as if it wanted to tear the world apart, and crashed into the illusionary world that was the manifestation of Su Ming's berserker mark. Rumbling sounds echoed in the air. The ice typhoon became smaller, but similarly, the Dark Mountain tribe formed from Su Ming's berserker mark scattered away like dust in the typhoon, like a picture that was ripped to shreds. When Dark Mountain tribe completely disappeared, Dark Mountain too trembled and shattered. Only the Blood Moon remained and crashed into the now greatly shrunken ice typhoon for the last time. The greatly reduced ice typhoon turned into 8 ice flowers once again and charged towards the Blood Moon while connected to each other. Under the blood-red light and the rumbling sounds, the first ice flower exploded, the second ice flower shattered, the third ice flower crumbled, and the fourth ice flower disintegrated, but the fifth ice flower broke through and crashed into the Blood Moon. The Blood Moon trembled and started showing signs of not being able to remain stable amidst the thunderous rumbles. At the same time, the sixth ice flower came forth and crashed into the Blood Moon. Soon, the seventh and eighth ice flowers crashed into the Blood Moon. A loud boom shook the skies, and when the Blood Moon broke down, the ice flowers disappeared. What a strong berserker mark! Sima Xin found himself unable to say that Su Ming was too weak anymore. At that moment, he was breathing rapidly. His berserker mark was already complete, but it only managed to reach a tie with Su Ming's berserker mark. This must be the limit for his berserker mark. This sort of berserker mark will not change anymore. Killing intent appeared in Sima Xin's eyes. In truth, he had harbored killing intent towards Su Ming since a long time ago but had always kept it hidden. After all, he was in Freezing Sky Clan. Yet when he witnessed the might of his berserker mark, he could no longer hide his killing intent. In the instant their berserker marks disappeared from the clash, Sima Xin made a sudden move. He turned into a long arc and charged towards Su Ming. He wanted to kill Su Ming. Yet at the moment he charged forward, Su Ming also took a step forward. He did not retreat, but used a similarly shocking speed to rush at Sima Xin. The two of them were not far from each other in the first place, hence with that rapid speed, in an instant, they closed in on each other. Once they were close, a large amount of electrical arcs immediately began swimming through Su Ming's entire body. As he swung his fist forward, an innumerable amount of lightning gathered together and charged towards Sima Xin with a thunderous rumble. Sima Xin also lifted his right hand and as he clenched it into a fist, 7-colored light appeared in his hand. Lightning and light clashed with each other, and as rumbling sounds spread out, the two of them let out muffled groans and tumbled backwards. Sima Xin moved 30 feet backwards, and Su Ming moved 50 feet back. At the moment the both of them came to a stop, they rushed towards each other once again. This time, Sima Xin tapped at a few spots on his body with both hands and 7-colored light immediately started shining on his body. There was a layer of ice underneath that 7-colored light which turned into ice armor on his body. This was the seven-colored ice armor Sima Xin had created himself. Similarly, black fog surrounded Su Ming's body. As a divine general of awakening, he also had his own armor. The black fog turned into armor, and at the instant it appeared, the stunned crowd that had been watching all around them immediately let out loud cries of surprise. A divine general of awakening. He's a divine general of awakening. No wonder he could fight against senior brother Sima. He's a divine general of awakening, he has extraordinary power, and the complexity of his berserker mark is simply outrageous and unheard of. The uproars had been stifled due to the intense battle between berserker marks just now, but erupted forth now with such force that it filled the air with buzzing sounds in an instant. In truth, Su Ming's identity as a divine general was hidden from the crowd largely due to the fourth summit. For some unknown reason, the left preceptor in the fourth summit had locked down all information regarding Su Ming. The other people in Freezing Sky Clan only knew that there was a new disciple in the ninth summit. As for his status, level of cultivation, and all the other things, it all remained fuzzy. As for Chen Yubing and Shu Ruyu, once the two of them returned to Freezing Sky Clan, they were placed under a gag order and were told not to talk about Su Ming. Is he the one who made Big Brother Sima angry? The girls who was on the seven-colored mountain gaze was fixed on Sima Xin, who remained mighty and powerful in her heart, all this while. As for Su Ming, her first impression towards him was bad, and since he was Sima Xin's enemy at the moment, she recalled the things that had happened when she was playing chess with Sima Xin, and her gaze towards Su Ming turned even more hostile. Chapter 237. Similar. Su Ming and Sima Xin stood in the sky. One of them was surrounded by black fog, which turned into a black fogged armor that gave off a ghastly feeling, while the other was surrounded by seven-colored light, and his ice armor seemed to be filled with light that pierced the eyes, making it hard for others to look at him directly. Two completely different presences, two completely different sets of armor, two completely different people. You are not in the bone sacrifice realm, Su Ming said languidly, and as he spoke, he charged forward. Sima Xin's face was sullen. With a cold harumph, he moved forward. The two of them crashed into each other once again in midair. Rumbling sounds reverberated in the air, and the fierce battle made all those watching around the area stop breathing. The longer Sima Xin battled, the more shocked he felt. He could not imagine just how Su Ming had become so strong in such a short amount of time. This was no longer the person he could defeat by just attacking with a move through manifesting his soul on a berserker seed. With such a speed in his growth, Su Ming had the right to make Sima Xin pay attention to him. This person is growing too quickly, I can't let him stay alive. Sima Xin took a few steps back and grabbed the air with his right hand. Immediately, an ice spear appeared in his hand, and he threw it towards Su Ming. At the same time, Sima Xin swung his left arm forward, and a round bottle appeared. With a snap of his fingers, howling sounds came from within the bottle. A white wolf charged out and started growing as it was exposed to the wind. In an instant, it grew up to be a few dozen feet tall. Its fur was white as snow, and with its fangs bared, it growled at Su Ming. That growl turned into a force that turned Su Ming's mind blank once it hit his body, as if he was shaken. Yet it only lasted for an instant before the power of aura refinement started circulating within him on its own and his mind immediately cleared up. He woke up too quickly, and it made Sima Xin frown. He fought against Su Ming with the long spear in hand, and at the same time, the ice wolf pounced on him. He fung. Su Ming took a few steps back and black fog immediately rushed out from his chest. That fog turned into He Feng, who had an agonized look on his face, but he did not dare choose not to fight. When he appeared, he charged towards the soul of the ice wolf. The both of them were spiritual entities, and though their battle may have been without sound, it was still incredibly vicious. At that moment, the mark of the sword at the center of Su Ming's brows flashed briefly, and the small virescent sword charged out with a whistle and spun around Su Ming's body. It moved with his will and crashed into Sima Xin's long spear with a loud bang. Su Ming's fight against Sima Xin did not just attract the attention of the people around the area, it even attracted the attention of some of the powerful berserkers in the 9 summits of the Great Frozen Plains. Some of those in the older generation even looked over. Su Ming's second senior brother was crouching down on the 9th summit tending to his plants. Occasionally, he would lift up his head towards the direction where the rumbling sounds came from and shake his head. Just how many times does this make since third failed entering his dream? Ah, the moment he gets agitated, he immediately wants to enter his dreams to fight against others. This is not good. Qian Xiezi sat at the top of the mountain with a pleased smile on his face as he looked at the place where the rumbling sounds were coming from. Not bad at all. Teach him a good lesson. There were other people gathered on the other mountains. As they looked at the battle, a rare sight in the great frozen plains of Freezing Sky Clan, the left preceptor in the fourth summit, the old man who liked wearing red robes, stood at the top of the mountain with a solemn expression on his face. The Virescent Light Sword, that's Hong Kong's treasure, why is it in his hands? He was frowning, but once he cast a glance towards the ninth summit, he shook his head and decided not to bother himself with what he deemed was a trivial matter. Besides him, the other people of the older generation also appeared on the other summits and sized up the battle from their respective spots. At that moment, on the mountainside of the seventh summit was a woman dressed in red. She was sitting on a big stone. Her black hair fell on her shoulders, and when they were occasionally lifted by the wind, her snow-white skin would be revealed underneath. She had a gentle look on her face as she watched the people battling against each other. Most of the time, her gaze was focused on Su Ming. A divine general of awakening, and with such a berserker mark too. What is his name? There were a few girls standing behind the woman. One of them quickly answered her, eldest senior sister, his name is Su Ming. He's a disciple on the ninth summit. At the moment, the battle which had caught the crowd's attention had yet to reach its most intense moment. The small Virescent sword shone and crashed into the incoming long spear. Before the rumbling sounds even disappeared, the second clashing sound had already spread in all directions. More lightning arcs swam through Su Ming's body and turned into numerous lightning sparks that charged towards Sima Xin. Thunder rumbled in the sky, and by the looks of it, lightning was about to fall. However, Sima Xin was the prodigy of Freezing Sky Clan. Su Ming might have seen through the fact that he had yet to reach the bone sacrifice realm, but the divine abilities and enchanted vessels he had were practically endless. The white wolf and the ice spear he had in his hand were definitely not any ordinary items. At the same time the snow surrounding him fought against Su Ming's lightning, the Virescent sword and ice spear, He Feng and the white wolf too fought against each other. While the battle might not have reached its most intense state, it had already reached an intensity that was not too far away. This was a battle that could not be settled in a short period of time. While Su Ming was currently also in the awakening realm, compared to Sima Xin, his level of cultivation was still a little lower. Yet he was a berserker who awakened with 999 blood veins and also understood the clearing mind art. With his divine abilities and origin vessel, he could fight against all those who were under the bone sacrifice realm. As the small Virescent sword and ice spear clashed against each other, as did Su Ming's lightning and Sima Xin's ice, and they once again let out a rumbling sound, Su Ming took a few abrupt steps backwards with a calm expression. As he moved back, he swiped his right hand before his chest. When he lifted it, a spherical medicinal pill immediately appeared in his hand. There was a snow flower in the medicinal pill as if it was sealed up within. There was an enchanting feeling to it. It let out a freezing chill, and dim light also spread out from the pill. It was Su Ming's spirit plunder. He only used this pill once after he created it, and it was when he was curing Fang Mu. In truth, this was the first time he brought this thing out during battle. The moment spirit plunder was taken out, it started spinning in the air. When Su Ming pointed towards Sima Xin, that pill instantly turned into a long arc that charged towards him. At the moment Su Ming brought out spirit plunder, Sima Xin's expression turned even more serious. He stared at the medicinal pill in his hands and took a few steps back as surprise appeared in his eyes. At the same time, he opened his mouth wide open and spat out. As he did so, a small black insect flew out of his mouth. The insect was built in the shape of a small rod about the length of a finger segment. If it was not twisting about in the air, it would be difficult for anyone to tell that it was actually an insect. When the insect flew out, it spread out its wings, and 4 pairs of thin wings could be seen on its rod-shaped body. There was green light shining on its head, making it look slightly terrifying. The moment the insect appeared, a malicious presence immediately erupted from its body, along with a buzzing sound that pierced the minds of all those who heard it. The insect turned into a ray of green light, but it did not charge towards the incoming spirit plunder. It went past the pill and charged towards Su Ming instead. That insect could be said to be the most precious item Sima Xin had besides the seven-colored mountain. He had only just obtained that insect and had only recently formed a small mental connection with it. He had tested this insect many times before, and Sima Xin had never seen anything that this insect could not pierce through. He had tried using this insect on many objects before, and all of them had ended up the same way. If it was not because Su Ming had the Divine General's armor and it would be difficult for any sort of divine ability to cause harm to him, Sima Xin would not have wanted to use this insect. At this moment, not only did he not want to face the strange object that had clearly sealed the berserker seed he had planted in Fang Mu charging towards him, he also wanted to kill Su Ming, or at the very least cause such grievous injuries to him that his power would fall. By doing so, once Sima Xin successfully cleared Freezing Sky Cave and entered Heaven Gate, no matter how quickly Su Ming improved, he would be of no threat to him. As Spirit Plunder and the small rod insect passed by each other and Spirit Plunder closed in on him, Sima Xin bit his tongue, coughed out blood, took a step forward, and turned into a blood figure. He fused together with his blood and seemed to have turned into an illusionary layer of mist instead of having physical form. It spread outwards, looking as if it could dodge Spirit Plunder's might. Yet the moment he was about to dodge, Spirit Plunder came to an abrupt halt and stopped in midair. An incredibly powerful absorption force that shocked Sima Xin exploded forth from it. That absorption force caught all the blood mist around the area, and the blood mist started showing clear signs of being sucked in. The mist struggled incessantly, and Sima Xin's face was revealed within. There was a hint of shock on his face, but once he gritted his teeth, he immediately split the illusionary blood mist into two separate parts. One of them was taken into Spirit Plunder, and the other rolled backwards quickly before it reverted back into Sima Xin once it was far away from the pill. His face was pale as he sucked in a sharp breath. What's with that thing? Su Ming was also shocked, because even though he was retreating quickly with a dazzling speed, he still could not shake off the insect charging towards him. That insect closed in on him in an instant and clashed with the small virescent sword. It knocked the sword away and closed in on Su Ming once again. The insect had even ignored the lightning arcs swimming in the air. Even though lightning covered its entire body, it did not slow down. With a bang, it pierced through Su Ming's Divine General armor. It was about to pierce Su Ming's body, but at that moment, a loud bell chime rang out from within Su Ming's body. In the face of danger, Han Mountain Bell materialized between Divine General armor and Su Ming's body, and it was the bell that finally managed to stop the insect's attack. As the bell chimes reverberated in the air, blood flowed out of Su Ming's mouth and he staggered a few hundred feet back. What's with this insect? Su Ming lifted his head swiftly. His question was shouted out almost at the same time as when Sima Xin shouted his. At that moment, a strange feeling formed in Su Ming's heart. That inconceivable feeling also formed in Sima Xin. There, so similar, someone from the crowd murmured. Chapter 238, Copy. They were two completely different people with two completely different names and two completely different lives. They were like two parallel lines that would never touch each other. Even if they were going in the same direction, they would never touch each other. This was Su Ming and Sima Xin before this battle in Freezing Sky Clan. Even when they started exchanging blows, the odd similarities that the people watching found were yet to come into existence, but as they continued attacking each other, everyone noticed, and it could even be said that the two of them were the last ones who noticed it. As the onlookers watched the battle continue, the feeling that these two were similar became stronger. One of them was lightning, the other ice. They may look different, but one of them had lightning swimming through his entire body while the other was surrounded by ice. Perhaps this was not enough to call them similar, but soon, when the small virescent sword and ice spear clashed with each other, the black Divine General armor and sparkling ice armor appeared, the feeling that they were alike started blossoming within their hearts. The moment Sima Xin brought out the round bottle and released the wolf, which was a rare vessel spirit that was definitely not something a normal person would be able to get, and he flew out of Su Ming's body, that feeling that they were similar reached an incredibly high level in an instant. The similarities reached an even higher level when Su Ming brought out Spirit Plunder and Sima Xin released the strange rod-shaped insect from his mouth, and when the both of them had the same expression and reaction as they faced these two completely different enchanted vessels. At that moment, it was as if all their similarities had fused together and erupted forth with a force that made even outsiders notice that these two people were very similar. Bell chimes reverberated in the air, and at that moment, the black rod-shaped insect that was only about the size of a finger's segment tumbled backward. However, its speed as it flew back had clearly been reduced. It even started swaying in the air, as if the crash had caused a backlash that it could only marginally withstand because it had been traveling too fast previously and because the echoes from Han Mountain Bell were too powerful. Su Ming watched the rod-shaped insect tumble back and recover in the span of a few breaths. The sight made his expression change. He suppressed all his other emotions, because he knew Han Mountain Bell's might well. That crash just now and subsequent rebound were difficult even for him to withstand. Yet that strange insect was already showing signs of recovery after such a short period of time. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He knew that he could not let that insect recover, or else that thing alone would affect him greatly. At the same moment the insect retreated, Su Ming lifted his right hand pointed towards it. He also took a huge step forward. The moment his foot landed, his body instantly appeared above the retreating insect, and soon, Han Mountain Bell appeared in his hands like a small bell, then like a huge shade that covered the small insect. In the distance, Sima Xin was forced to split up and discard part of the blood figure formed from his blood under the might of Spirit Plunder. His face was pale. While he did not cough out blood like Su Ming, he was also clearly weakened. When he saw Su Ming's actions, Sima Xin's eyes immediately became clouded with anger. He charged forth with a low growl and grabbed the air with his right hand. Immediately, the floating seven-colored mountain in the distance erupted with a piercing seven-colored light. The girl standing on the seven-colored mountain let out a cry of surprise and quickly flew back. There was a floating ribbon under her feet which supported her. Right then, in his battle against Su Ming, Sima Xin finally used his most powerful enchanted treasure, the seven-colored mountain. Su Ming, how dare you touch my snake? Sima Xin's face was vicious. As he grabbed the air with his right hand, the red light from the light of the seven-colored mountain shone with an intensity that was far brighter than all the other colors. It was as if it was asked to come forth from the seven lights. As the light shone, the seven-colored mountain looked as if it only possessed that one color. God of Berserker's transformation, seven colors refinement, scarlet style. Veins popped out on Sima Xin's face, and his body was dyed in a scarlet shade. His right hand curled up and turned into a five-fingered claw. The scarlet shade on his hand was incredibly alluring, and he swiped his clawed hand towards the floating seven-colored mountain that was currently shining with a red light. The moment he swiped his hand across, the red light from the seven-colored mountain immediately started flickering as if the fog on it was boiling. As it flickered, the mountain let out a buzzing sound. The red light looked as if it was absorbed into Sima Xin's right hand, and a large amount of it was gathered there before turning into a scarlet long sword. That sword was 7 feet long and looked as if it was dyed with blood. There was even a harrowing sadness coming from it that stunned people. When Sima Xin held the sword in his hands, he swung it down in Su Ming's direction. That slash immediately made the world dark. An oppressive feeling spread out so suddenly that the crowd watching immediately felt as if they were suffocating. It was as if that sword stroke had sucked in all the air from the world. A sadness that could affect all those around it spread out in all directions as the sword slashed downward. The place where I was born still did things according to the laws of the universe. A voice filled with grief spilled out of Sima Xin's mouth as he swung the sword down. His expression seemed to have fused together with the sword, and with that one sentence, he executed one sword stroke. The moment that sword stroke fell, Han Kangzi's face turned pale on the third summit. The oval-shaped faced woman beside her also sucked in a deep breath. He casted the God of Berserker's transformation. When the red-robed left preceptor saw this on the fourth summit, he narrowed his eyes. Looks like he has understood the first style of the God of Berserker's transformation. All those who understood the meaning of the sword stroke turned their attention towards the attack from their respective summits. On the ninth summit, a gourd had appeared in Tian Xiezi's hands some time ago. He placed it by his mouth and drank from it before he shook his head and disdain appeared in his eyes. God of Berserker's transformation, it's not worthy of the word, transformation. One day, I'll let the people know just what is the true God of Berserker's transformation. But Sima Shin's method of casting this divine ability has some form of transformation that originated from him. Tian Xiezi did not seem to be paying attention to the question of how Su Ming was going to deal with that shocking sword slash. He was drinking wine instead and was uttering words that no one else could hear besides himself. It was as if he had the confidence that Su Ming could deal with that sword strike. Similarly, Su Ming's second senior brother, who was still planting flowers on the snow-covered ground with his back bent on the 9th summit, lifted his head to look into the distance when his right hand, which was holding several flowers, faltered. He trained his eyes on the distance as he mumbled under his breath, "Youngest junior brother, this is a rare chance, God of Berserker's transformation, this is the strongest skill in Freezing Sky Clan. When people draw, they first learn by copying others, only then will they be able to create their own drawings." Su Ming and Sima Shin's battle had attracted even more attention from the people gathered under Heaven Gate and in the center of 9 summits of the Great Frozen Plains. When Sima Shin casted the God of Berserker's transformation and brought out the red light from the 7-colored mountain before turning it into a long sword that seemed to be dyed with blood and swung it down, the presence that exploded from that sword strike caused the battle to instantly reach its most intense moment. The red light from the sword brought forth a strange sound as it sliced through the air. It sounded as if there were numerous people mourning and crying, and when the sounds gathered together into one, it turned into the sound of the scarlet sword slicing through the air. A hint of seriousness appeared on Su Ming's calm face. He had already known a long time ago of Sima Shin's strength. Although he was no longer the same as he was before, there was still some difference in power between him and Sima Shin. Just this sword strike from alone was already enough to make Su Ming feel that he could not fend against it. Sima Shin's murmurs echoed in his ears. Those words had fused into the sword, and it seemed to be filled with a power that could change the world, a change that far surpassed Su Ming's ability to possibly comprehend it. It was this change that seemed to be able to turn something decadent into something great that caused this simple sword slash to turn into a power that Su Ming could not resist. The sword itself was also a treasure manifested from Sima Shin's 7-colored mountain, which meant that it contained an incredible power. With the might of the divine ability, God of Berserker's transformation, the might contained within the sword stroke was enough to kill all berserkers under the bone sacrifice realm, Su Ming analyzed. Even the powerful berserkers in the bone sacrifice realm would find it hard to resist this sword slash. However, Su Ming had yet to arrive at the bone sacrifice realm. He could assume it as such and could not be certain of it. The moment the sword fell towards him, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He knew that Han Mountain Bell was the only thing that could perhaps fight against this sword, but if he used Han Mountain Bell to fend against the attack, then he would not be able to subjugate the rod-shaped insect that was about to recover. If he let the rod-shaped insect recover its speed and clear its mind, then Su Ming would be forced into a complete defensive position in this battle. Yet if he did not give up on the rod-shaped insect and took Sima Shin's sword slash, Su Ming's pupils shrank and he sighed. He was just about to give up on the bizarre rod-shaped insect when the light in his eyes flickered. He saw the speed of the sword slashing down from the sky start slowing down in a peculiar manner. This decrease in speed came very suddenly, and even more strange was that the sword's sudden slowness seemed to have gone unnoticed by others. When Su Ming instinctively looked towards his surroundings, he noticed that everything in the world around him had also slowed down. It was as if a wave of power had come to the place without a sound, and in that instant, controlled the flow of time in the place. This is what I created. Once your powers of creation have reached a certain level, this sort of change will happen depending on what you've been creating. It's somewhat similar to Space Void, but it's also different. To others, it may look like it only lasted for an instant, but in your current state, it will seem very slow. You have ample time to remember this one sword slash and understand the changes within this attack, find it, then block the boy Sima's attack fairly and squarely. There was a strange look on Su Ming's face as he looked at the people around him, whose actions had been slowed down by several fold. He turned his gaze towards the scarlet sword shining with a red light which was also falling down slowly. He did not know how Tian Xiezi had managed to do it, but he would need an incredible amount of courage to do so under the scrutiny of so many people in Freezing Sky Clan. The warmth in Su Ming's heart grew due to his master's kindness, and his feelings of belonging to the Ninth Summit increased. However, he knew that this was not the time for him to feel moved. As he watched the scarlet sword fall slowly from the sky, his eyes gradually became empty and blank. He lifted his right hand, and with his index finger as the brush, he started drawing out the trajectory of the sword. Chapter 239. First Appearance of Picture Creation. He drew one stroke after another. Each time Su Ming lifted his right hand and drew with his index finger, the space before him would disappear slowly layer by layer like he was tearing off layers of membranes. He did not know how much time had passed by, but Su Ming's actions in copying the sword stroke were gradually slowing down. Time continued passing by as he continued drawing. Su Ming did not know how many strokes he had drawn and just how many times he had copied the trajectory of the sword. He might not know the specifics, but he knew that each time he drew, while each stroke seemed the same, but in truth, they were all different. If he drew it 1,000 times, then those 1,000 strokes were different from each other. If he drew them 10,000 times, then those 10,000 strokes would be different from each other. Yet he still had not found the grief that spread out when Sima Shin swung the sword. It was as if he could not fuse that emotion with his stroke. It only made Su Ming want to draw the principles contained within the sword stroke even more, hence he paid even more attention to the various changes in that sword slash. Yet there seemed to be no rules hidden within it, making it difficult for him to completely understand it, which would allow him to draw the sword slash with his right index finger. He knew that it was difficult to completely understand the power behind the sword slash. That was why he did not think about trying to understand it in one go. Instead, each time he copied the sword slash, he would find something different within the attack and copy it to his new drawing. Gradually, as time passed by, with each time Su Ming's right hand fell down, he came to slowly sense the presence of the invisible and innumerable membranes that were disappearing before him layer by layer as the scarlet sword fell. As the membranes disappeared, Su Ming's body also came closer to the incoming scarlet sword. Su Ming remained calm, but his empty eyes made him seem as if he had lost his soul. Perhaps more accurately speaking, it was as if his soul had gone to his right index finger. With each stroke, his soul would seep into the world to feel the strange changes contained within the sword as it fell down in the gigantic world. Those strokes made him seem like he was drawing out the lines for a picture. The invisible membranes continued disappearing as Su Ming moved forward slowly. Every single time he took a step, he would draw many lines in the air, causing more membranes to disappear. Yet he knew clearly that with his current abilities, he could only copy out the form of the sword slash, but not its soul. Even if he used his own soul to draw it, he could not feel its sadness. That was why his strokes had no life. Sadness, Su Ming mumbled. As his right hand drew time and again before him, he found his sadness and the sadness within Dark Mountain. Yet, there was something missing from that sadness, causing it to be unable to fuse with the stroke. It's lacking an aged feeling. When Su Ming came to the side of the falling scarlet sword and observed the sword in close proximity with just a few feet between them, he suddenly jolted and a hint of understanding appeared within him. Among the people I met, there's only one person who has this old and aged feeling. Su Ming lowered his head and his right eye was gradually stained in red until it eventually turned into the blood moon of Dark Mountain. Wherefore doth thou cry, O blue sky? He mumbled and closed his eyes. He lifted his right index finger instinctively and drew once again. This time, he drew a diagonal stroke. If that stroke was drawn on paper, perhaps it would only form a horizontal line. However, this simple line would make people feel that it contained the power to change the world once they saw it. But he was drawing on air. The final invisible membrane between Su Ming and the scarlet sword tore apart with a ripping sound that no ear could hear when Su Ming drew that line. The instant it disappeared, Su Ming lifted his right hand once again and drew a stroke in the direction of the scarlet sword, in the air where all the invisible membranes between them no longer existed. That stroke was also a horizontal line, yet while that horizontal line seemed like it was only one simple stroke, it was in truth the culmination of all the thousands upon thousands of strokes taken when Su Ming copied the trajectory of the sword. At the instant that stroke was completed, the numerous horizontal lines he drew previously appeared by his side. No one could see the strokes that seemed like mere scribbles, only Su Ming could because he was the one who'd drawn them. At that moment, these innumerable horizontal lines gathered before Su Ming and fell on his final stroke as if they were overlapping each other. These thousands upon thousands of strokes fell on top each other and eventually turned into the most powerful horizontal line Su Ming could draw after copying the trajectory of the sword in the air. The moment this stroke was finished, rumbling sounds seemed to echo in the world, and the world before him shattered like a mirror. Once a layer of something seemed to have been swept away from the world, uproars reverberated through the air and a shrill whistling sound descended from the sky. The world had returned to normal. Time seemed to have stopped a moment before Su Ming tried to understand that sword slash, and when the world returned to normal, he found himself returning to that instant. It was as if everything that had happened was just an illusion. A dazed look appeared on Su Ming's face. His right hand was lifted and remained in the same position of when he'd drawn his final stroke in the strange world. The shrill whistling sound before him was from Sima Xin's scarlet sword. That sword was now tumbling backwards, and with a boom, it could no longer maintain its sword form. It turned into a large amount of red light and returned to the seven-colored mountain behind Sima Xin, who was looking at him with an aghast look in his eyes and an expression full of disbelief. Sima Xin's breathing quickened. All the people who were watching looked towards Su Ming, and their gazes were filled with shock along with horror. Just now, they saw the scarlet sword slicing down towards Su Ming. Su Ming originally did not react to it, but when the sword was less than 100 feet away from him, he suddenly lifted his head, and with his right hand, he waved at the incoming scarlet sword gently. Yet that wave made the space between him and the scarlet sword twist. Before any of them saw it clearly, rumbling sounds echoed in the air, and the scarlet sword let out a shrill whistling sound before it tumbled backwards because it could not fight against that wave, and eventually could not even maintain its sword form. To top it off, that was the god of Berserker's transformation Sima Xin had casted. After a short moment of silence, uproars rose in the air like a constant buzzing. There was surprise and bewilderment as the people looked at Su Ming, as if they had just renewed their understanding of this unfamiliar face before them. Sima Xin breathed rapidly. He might not have been injured, but during that instant when Su Ming waved his hand lightly and made his scarlet sword tumble backwards before shattering, he was stunned. He understood the might of his god of Berserker's transformation art, and it was precisely because of this understanding that his heart pounded and raced against his chest while he looked at Su Ming with a face filled with disbelief. Impossible, he's not in the bone sacrifice realm, how could he so easily dispel that one style I mastered? And the method he used to counter it just now. Sima Xin could not believe what he saw just now, and the movements Su Ming made when he waved away the sword were also incredibly familiar to him. During that instant, there was a subtle hint of grief that made him feel shaken. A brilliant glint appeared in the eyes of the red-robed left preceptor standing on the fourth summit. With a grave expression on his face, he took a step forward and took a careful look at Su Ming, who was standing in the battlefield in the distance. Creation, the left preceptor mumbled and kept his gaze fixed on Su Ming for a long time. Some of the older generation who rarely left their mountains on the great frozen plains of Freezing Sky Clan turned their attention towards Su Ming. His final wave during the battle just now was enough to make them feel shaken. The long-haired woman sitting on the platform on the eighth summit lifted her right hand and tucked her hair behind her ear. When she lowered her hand, she drew a line before her gently. The arc she drew bore some similarities to the horizontal lines Su Ming had drawn. The similarity was not in the appearance of the lines, but the essence within those strokes. In fact, when she drew her arc, the air before her also twisted, as if she had just imitated Su Ming's actions with ease. However, the sorrow and aged feeling was missing from her stroke. What an interesting stroke, a disciple of the ninth summit, The woman smiled faintly. The dazed look on Su Ming's face disappeared and the calm look returned. However, his heart remained in a state of shock. Yet when his mind cleared, a sharp pain spread through his entire body, causing him to turn pale and he coughed out blood before staggering a few steps back. This pain did not come from a specific spot within him, but from his entire body. Every single inch of his flesh and bone, even his veins and organs were crying out in pain. This pain came too suddenly, as if Su Ming had performed an action that far surpassed what his body could endure just now, and it had caused his body and his organs to show signs of weakening. When Su Ming retreated, Han Mountain Bell had already captured the rod insect. Once it held the creature within it, Han Mountain Bell shrank and returned to the size of a small bell before it flew back to Su Ming and landed in his hand. Buzzing sounds appeared from within the bell, causing it to tremble in Su Ming's hand, as if the captured rod insect was struggling furiously inside. After all, Su Ming was still not in total control over Han Mountain Bell. He might have been able to take it away, but in terms of using its power, as of now he could only use the bell's tolls and turn them into a sound wave, and also use the bell to seal things just like before. Not too far away, when Sima Shin saw Su Ming coughing up blood, his expression relaxed slightly and was no longer as shocked as it was before. If Su Ming could really dispel his first style in the God of Berserker's transformation without suffering any form of injury, then Sima Shin would immediately turn away and return to the first summit to isolate himself and avoid Su Ming. Yet when he saw Su Ming coughing up blood, Sima Shin's confidence returned. He stared at Su Ming and took a deep breath. A serious expression of an intensity never seen before appeared on his face. He lifted his right hand slowly and pushed his palm up towards the sky. If you can fight against my final attack, then from now onwards, whenever I see you, I will immediately kneel down towards you. Sima Shin said resolutely and made a slight hooking motion in the air with his fingers. In the span of that breath, from the various tribes on the land of South Morning, all the berserker seeds Sima Shin had planted in the people just like he'd done to Fang Mu shuddered violently and fell unconscious in different locations. Great art of heartless berserker seed. Sima Shin's hair floated without wind and a dim light appeared in his eyes. He spread his arms outward, causing him to look extraordinarily enchanting in midair. Chapter 240. My name is Bai Su. The moment Sima Shin spoke the words, the crowd quickly retreated once again and an even wider space was cleared for the battle. All their gazes were no longer trained on Sima Shin, but on Su Ming, and their looks were all conflicted. Su Ming rarely spoke, and it seemed to them that he was a quiet man. Yet Su Ming and Sima Shin's battle had made the other Freezing Sky clan disciples from the other 8 summits to remember him. Their previous disdainful comments were already gone like the wind. Su Ming had used his actions to crush all their disdain and contempt, and all these emotions had melted into the hearts of all those who'd spoken those words. To them, Su Ming was now an existence that could be said to be equal to Sima Shin. He might be slightly weaker than he was, but if he could fight against Sima Shin to this point and force him to use the great art of heartless berserker seed, then it could only mean that he was an extraordinary person. From this day onwards, Su Ming's name would sweep through the land like a typhoon, and there will be a lot of people who would remember everything that had happened. Perhaps in the future, there will be one more person who will be known as the prodigy of Freezing Sky Clan. However, this person belonged to the 9th summit. Moreover, he was not their senior brother or junior brother. He was their Uncle Master. The 4th in seniority from the 9th summit, Uncle Master Su. However, when Han Kangzi heard Sima Shin's words from where she stood on the 3rd summit, her expression instantly changed. She had a vague feeling that something was off with Sima Shin's words. It was as if there was something within them that made her skin crawl and her heart clench in terror. It was as if the attack was not as simple as it seemed, but there was a danger within that could not be pinpointed. No, there's something wrong with this, Han Kangzi mumbled. With a frown on her face, she started mulling over his words. At the same time, Han Feizi was also watching from the 4th summit. However, she was different from Han Kangzi. She did not think about what Sima Shin said, but was watching Su Ming. There was shock on her face. Su Ming's strength had once again exceeded Han Feizi's expectations. This change made her feel that if Su Ming continued growing stronger, then the distance between them would increase. The red-robed left preceptor had a displeased look in his eyes as he stood on the 4th summit. The others might not understand the meaning behind Sima Shin's words, but he did. Preposterous. The old man let out a cold harumph and swept his eyes towards the quiet ninth summit before he fell silent. The long-haired woman sitting on the big stone platform on the seventh summit was also frowning. When she looked at Sima Xin standing in the distance, there was disgust in her eyes. I read some ancient scrolls before, and one of them recorded the words left from one of the other worlds. What did it say now? The woman spoke softly, and the women standing behind her immediately stood to attention. Some of them even looked excited and eager. Being able to receive pointers from their eldest senior sister was something fortunate to them. If you stay on your Tao 1 but have no method of solving a particular problem now, that method will eventually come to you. If you have the skills and power, but have strayed from your Tao, then you cannot use your skills, and your power will forever stay stagnant. I don't understand the Tao meant by those in the other worlds, but now. The woman's gaze went from Su Ming to Sima Xin, a contemplative look on her face. Qian Shiezi continued drinking from his gourd at the top of the ninth summit. It was as if he did not hear what had happened outside. Su Ming's second senior brother, who was still crouching down tending to his flowers at the mountainside, frowned and put aside the flowers in his hands before standing up and casting his gaze into the distance. Sima Xin's words were still echoing in the air above the buildings located at the center of the 9 summits and under Heaven Gate. All of his divine abilities were built with the great art of Heartless Berserker Seed as its basis. Even the god of Berserker's transformation would show different changes according to the different art practiced. With Sima Xin, the art was based on his great art of Heartless Berserker Seed. This art was created by the second god of Berserkers and contained immeasurable power. Legend said that the second god of Berserkers used this art to enslave those from the other worlds, this way obtaining the right to become the god of Berserkers. He might not have reached the height of power of the first god of Berserkers, but he was still powerful enough to make clouds tumble with just a shout. Sima Xin used a lot of time and effort in practicing this art. Just the act of searching for Berserker's seeds alone had used up a lot of time and energy on his side. Unless he absolutely had to, he did not want to activate this ability to fight against his enemies. Because once he used this ability, all the Berserker children that had been planted with the Berserker seed would fall into a certain state, just like Fang Mu had previously done, and die. This was something Sima Xin found hard to accept. It would make all the progress he had with the great art of Heartless Berserker Seed come to a halt, and he would have to find enough Berserker children before he could begin practicing the art again. Yet now, Sima Xin casted this art against Su Ming without much hesitation. This was not a moment of recklessness, but a choice after a long period of careful thought. He would rather sacrifice all his Berserker children to obtain a new one. This new Berserker son was Su Ming. Su Ming's growth speed, his frightening potential, and his action in dispelling his god of Berserker's transformation not only made Sima Xin shocked and aghast, it also sprouted a sinister thought in his heart. The idea was to plant a Berserker seed in Su Ming's body and turn him into his Berserker seed. If I can turn him into my Berserker seed, then with his growth speed and his potential, it'll be worth it for me to sacrifice all my other Berserker children. After all, while good Berserker children are difficult to find, people like Su Ming are even rarer. Now that I've found one, I won't be satisfied with letting him go. A light flickered in Sima Xin's eyes, and when he looked towards Su Ming, there was a strange look hidden deep within his eyes. When he declared that if Su Ming could receive his subsequent and final attack, then he would bow down towards him in the future, those words were actually something out of character for him. If there was no underlying meaning behind his words, he would not do something so stupid. That sentence was the same as forcing himself into a corner. He had to win, or else the consequences would be unbearable for him. In truth, the words he said were a suggestion required for the art and for him to plant the Berserker seed. It could even be said to be a hook. He would bury the words in Su Ming's heart and make it a hook. The more Su Ming placed his attention on it, the more weight those words would carry. Then with those words as a hook, he could form a strange connection with Su Ming. While that connection may not have physical form and would be something imaginary, this sort of hook was the connecting line that was particularly important in practicing the great art of Heartless Berserker Seed. By using the outcome of the battle as a hook, burying the words in Su Ming's heart, then gathering them into a seed within him as a premise, then if Sima Xin won this battle, the seed would slowly grow into a real berserker seed in its unique way within Su Ming. Even if he lost, then when he saw Su Ming and had to kneel down before him, the surges of emotion Su Ming would feel, no matter how small they may be, when he saw this action would nourish the berserker seed and allow it to grow. This was the mysterious and domineering quality of the great art of heartless berserker seed, the art that few people had understood over the countless years that had passed. As long as the targets had a slight opening in their minds, then this art could rip apart that opening and enter. The casters would not take their target's spirits, but could use them and their power for themselves. This divine ability was simply too tyrannical. If the caster did not completely understand the art, then the rate of success would be low. Unless they could use their power to suppress their targets and forcefully plant the seed within them, then they would need luck. If Sima Xin won, then he would have complete ownership over this powerful berserker son. If he lost, he could still slowly make Su Ming turn into his berserker son. To Sima Xin, the only thing he would lose was a bit of his reputation. This was something he could bear. Right now, he was floating in midair. As he spread out his arms, the presence coming from within him increased at a shocking speed. It even gave others the feeling that he had reached the bone sacrifice realm. Su Ming frowned. He had already heard Sima Xin's words. There was something he couldn't describe within them. It was as if the words had crawled into his heart and were echoing endlessly within him. At that moment, an anxious voice suddenly traveled out from the third summit. Su Ming, don't fight him. He wants to plant. That voice belonged to Han Kangzi, yet she could only speak further. With a cold harumph from Sima Xin, her words were immediately cut off. Nonetheless, even though she did not manage to finish speaking, this battle was bound to not be able to continue, because right after Sima Xin let out that sound, the left preceptor's dark and sullen voice traveled out from the fourth summit and reverberated through Freezing Sky Clan. The school forbids infighting. Do you two not know the rules? That voice was not loud, but there was an intimidating power to it. When it fell into everyone's ears, each word was like a roar of thunder that grew increasingly louder by the word until it eventually turned into countless echoes that sounded as if there were tens of thousands of people growling at the same time. It shook the world and caused the weather to change, the clouds to tumble back, and even the ice on the ground to shudder. Sima Xin trembled. He felt as if there was thunder roaring right beside his ears. The presence rising within him was cut off, and he staggered 3 steps back and blood flowed down the corner of his lips. Su Ming was the same. His ears rang, and his face instantly grew pale. He staggered 5 steps back, and as blood flowed from his mouth, a light bell toll came from Han Mountain Bell hiding within his body. Sima Xin, Su Ming is your senior. He has full right to block your 7-colored mountain. You were the one at fault. You were punished to 3 months of isolation and you are not allowed to leave the first summit during that time. Now go. Sima Xin's expression changed and he eventually lowered his head to bow towards the 4th summit. Then with a dark look on his face, he put away the 7-colored mountain and looked at the girl who was still watching and gave her a nod before he flew back towards the 1st summit. As for the rest of you, leave. The left preceptor's voice rang loud and the people gathered instantly bowed towards the 4th summit respectfully before they turned to Su Ming. Some of them even wrapped their fists in their palms and saluted him with smiles on their faces before they quickly left, allowing some semblance of normalcy to return to the place. As for the girl who looked exactly like Bai Ling but was not Bai Ling, she hesitated for a moment before looking at Su Ming. There was still hostility in her eyes, but this was the first time she spoke to Su Ming. You asked for my name previously. This isn't some secret to begin with, you'll know eventually, since you're a disciple in Freezing Sky Clan. My name is Bai Su. I hope that you can return to Big Brother Sima what belongs to him. Taking what belongs to others will only make others despise you.